Hello everybody. Hi, all parents and students. Good evening. I'm teacher Weilun. I'm the academic director here at MindStretcher. And together with me, actually, teacher Alvin, the co-founder of MindStretcher, will be in later. So just wanted to also take this chance before we start today's session proper to really congratulate each and every one of our students here, right? So you all have completed a very important milestone in your life, right? Having finished the O levels and now really looking to go towards the post-secondary route as well. And if you just look back, actually, it has not been an easy journey. So it has been a number of hoops, a number of different obstacles that you all went through, right? Be it in terms of the PSLE at primary six, and then now at secondary four, and then now you're thinking ahead, right, into the post-secondary space. Actually, today what we'll be doing is that there's a series of different webinars that we have starting from tonight, right? So as we would know, you all have just gotten your results and you have essentially this 6 day window where you have to think through the choices of schools and your choices of courses and programs, including also how to effectively put in the choices for the JAE. So what we will do is that for tonight, we will kick off with more of a overarching session, focusing more on the different options that are available. Thereafter, as you will be aware, tomorrow, over the course of tomorrow night and also Saturday, we will be having also more specific pathway type sessions. Tomorrow, actually, we will have one specifically for JC, right? So for students who are really thinking about going to JCs and have certain questions on that, that's one part that we'll do a deeper dive on for tomorrow night. And then for the Saturday session will be more on the Polytechnic options for those of you who are more keen on that. And of course, if you have any questions along the way on those, you can also post them here and we'll see how to take them up as well. Right. So for tonight, actually, as mentioned, I'm teacher Weilun, and together with me we have Alvin who will be coming in. So we will be covering across the different kind of pathways. And I think some of the burning questions that are on the folks' minds are usually, if you look at, say, for example, the Polytechnic route versus like the JC route, right? So what is the difference? What are some of the implications? And indeed, if you think about it this way, um, the runway is a bit more narrow now, right? And why do I say that? Is because the last time you all did this exercise, it was in primary school, right? So it was primary six, you all had finished the PSLE, and then you all were going to secondary. There was still a lot more flexibility, a lot more options. But right now, actually, if you realize, after you are done with secondary, now you go on to post-secondary, essentially you only have that 2 or 3 years, right? Before, after that, for the guys, right, the guys will go on to NS, and then after that, for the girls, you'll be going on to university or to the tertiary options already. So actually, there's a more narrow runway, right, in terms of the number of things that you can decide before it actually has a bearing on all those things. So in fact, actually, because of a very narrow runway, there is actually, quite a lot of implications, right? Depending on the choices that you choose as well. Okay. So anyway, as I mentioned, right, anytime you have any questions, feel free to also post it in the chat and we will be happy to also take it from there. Okay. But meanwhile, let me go to the slides for today and then we will use that to share, right, for the materials for tonight. Okay. So as mentioned, right, so let me just toggle over to the slides. Okay, so you all should be able to see my slides now. Okay, so right, the O-level results week, right, and the options after the O-level. So there's a few things that we will cover for tonight. Number one, in terms of the ongoing JAE process, right, and what it means for all the students here. Number two is really more in terms of the different pathways, the post-secondary courses and programs. Three is really coming from the perspective of the strategies for school selection. And this is one part that, again, I also wanted to highlight a few interesting differences that some of you may not actually realize between, say, for example, when you were in primary school, because that was the first time that you all did the exercise, right? When you all had that 6 choices in primary school, vis-a-vis the 12 choices you all have today for the JAE. How does it differ in terms of that process and what are some of the things to take note? I will be covering a bit more on that as well later. Fourth is in terms of the key considerations for different pathways, right? So as mentioned, there's going to be different routes available, right? There's going to be the junior college route, polytechnic, and the ITE route. And what I will focus a bit more on is also in terms of these different pathways, some of the implications, some of the considerations as well. Particularly for those of you, and I think it's a very interesting observation now is that, there are many students who feel that, in terms of their scores, right? Even if their scores allow them to go to JC, actually a lot of times they may also be thinking, right, should I actually go on the polytechnic route? With different kind of considerations that we will cover later as well. And then we also address some common questions, right, that students or even adults or parents may have. Okay. Yeah. So JAE, right? So and what it means for students. So as mentioned, actually the results have just been released this week, and then now you all have a 6 days window to really make your decisions with regards to the secondary school's choices, right? And in terms of your courses as well. Of course, for all of you here, so I don't think this one should be an issue per se, right? So all of you should be eligible for the 2026 JAE, right? Given that you're, as Singapore citizens or PR with the valid GCE O-level results. Okay. Alvin is also in, so maybe just to take the chance to introduce. So Alvin, co-founder of MyStretcher. So he has worked with many students in terms of helping them to choose schools all the way from primary to secondary and also to the post-secondary and tertiary. Yeah. So Alvin, as mentioned also, anytime that anybody has any questions, feel free to type it in the chat, and we'll be happy to take it from there as well. Okay.
Yes. So thank you, Weilun, for the introduction. Yeah, I think it's very important that all of you ask whatever questions that come to your mind. Okay, because you only have a couple of days, and obviously because you're still relatively young, many questions. Which JC do you want to go to? Um, is there any particular JC you have questions with? So all these things you need to feel free. So obviously there is no one size fits all for everybody, and this is not an exact science. So what we can do is that we're going to share with you, give you all the reality of the situation so that you all can make an informed decision. Okay, very, very important. Yes. Thank you,
Yeah,
Wilun.
thanks, Alvin. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so going back to the slide again, right? So as mentioned, in terms of some of the timelines that everybody should actually bear in mind, right? So in terms of the deadline, right, for submitting the choices of your courses, right? So that is 19 Jan, right, on Monday. When can you look forward to the posting results? That will be on 3rd Feb. So usually how it works in terms of the timeline is once the posting results are out in February, actually the next day, right? So the 4th February, the next working day after the results are released, if you are posted to junior college or Millennium Institute, that's actually where you will report to school the day after. For Polytechnic and Institute of Technical Education, then it's a bit different, right? So you don't go to school straight away. There's usually a longer window, and that's where you will get further enrollment instructions from the schools as well, right? On when to report and what to do and everything. So this is just a timeline for you to take note so that you don't miss out any important timelines or milestones over there. In terms of these two things, right? In terms of the Form A, this is something that all of you should have gotten. So just as a recap and as a refresher, actually the Form A itself would already have told you all the different scores that you have calculated based on the admissions for both the JCMI route and also for the Polytechnic route. So you will see it over there. Also for the benefit of the parents, in case the parents here need a bit of a clarification on that, right? So for the JC and MI, right? So the calculation for that is based on the L1R5 for JC and the L1R4 for admissions to MI, right? The Polytechnic calculation is a bit different, right? So it's the ELR2B2, right? So this is the English relevant two subjects and best two subjects. And of course, A, B, C, and D is because they are split according to the groups and the clusters, right? So the idea here, essentially, it gives you all the scores that you need. And also very importantly, it tells you whether you're eligible for JCMI and also in terms of all the, programs that you are eligible at the Polytechnic level as well, right? So this is a important reference document for you as you go about choosing your schools and everything. What we have done here at MyStretcher actually is we have also compiled in terms of for the JCs themselves the cutoff points from the past couple of years, and we see that that's actually a useful point of reference for students. Later on, I'll be going through that as well, just to let you have a sense, like based on that information, how can we make use of it, and how do we use it in terms of populating our choices as well. Okay, so that's the thing to note. After you have submitted the application, actually it will look something like that. So in case some of you are wondering, actually in terms of the application itself, right? The key things to note, of course, is in terms of the choices of your courses, right? So your 12 choices of courses. In fact, because you can see for, apart from the JC, so remember you can put in both for the JCs and the Polytechnic. And then for the Polytechnics themselves, they are also based on the courses that you are doing. Also, just to take note, even for the JCs themselves, the art and the science stream, right? So later on, I'll touch a bit on that also and the implications, and if any of you have some considerations, right, with regards to that, we can also share a bit more on some of the considerations, both for the JC route and also for the poly route too. Okay. And yeah, with that, so that's the first part on the timeline. The second part here, of course, for the post-secondary options, just to let you all have a sense make of the different universe that we are looking at here, right? So in terms of the universe of post-secondary options, if you look at it, namely the JCMI route, right, where you have all the JC options available, the polytechnics and also the ITEs, right? So that's what we are generally looking at. Some parents, I think, right off the bat may have some clarifications with regards to what's the difference exactly between, say, MI and JCs, right? So, why is it that there's this MI, right? And then there's this other JCs. What's the difference between them? So maybe what I will do is I'll take the chance to also clarify that now, right? So MI actually, if you look at it compared to the JC route, JC route as a very traditional route is a two-year route. So what happens is after Sec 4, your son and daughter, they will go on to JC1, J1, and then J2. And then thereafter, they will be taking the A-level examinations really, right? And after the A-level examinations, that's where they will then go on to university, right? That's usually how it works for JC. Unlike JC, which is a 2-year window, MI actually goes on a 3-year, right? So there is a longer runway. And why is there a longer runway? Because um, there is that consideration that perhaps some students need a bit more time, right? In terms of working through the curriculum, in terms of making sure that their post-secondary, their tertiary, or rather post-secondary foundation building onto tertiary is there, right? Is solid enough. So actually it gives a longer window. So on top of this like 2-year, now it's spread out across 3 years. But in terms of their curriculum, so if you look at it, let's say if you are doing a subject on say like economics or a subject like mathematics, the curriculum itself is not different, right? The coverage is still aligned with the A levels. The only difference between MI and JCs is that it's over a 3-year period. So that's one of the key difference. So generally, students who, number one, right? So I think there's a few considerations, especially if you look at whether MI is a place that you would like to go to. Number one is in terms of the pacing, right? The pacing. And I can tell you one of the reality here also is that you will see actually for JC, if you are asking now in terms of the step up, in terms of the difficulty level, if I just give you as a gauge lah. So let's say for example, if you look at math at secondary 4, right? So a lot of you, I'm sure you all have done math, you all have done A math. If you look at math and A math as like a 6, right, in terms of the difficulty level, then when you come to JC and you do like H2 mathematics, the difficulty level will shoot up to like a 8 or a 9, right? And it's pretty marked up in terms of the difficulty, and you have a very small window. That means you just have a 2-year period to make sure that you get everything right and then take the A levels, right? And not every student can manage that well, right? In fact, I must also caution that a lot of students, when you go, like if you do go into JC, you will also realize that, a lot of your first few months is kind of wasted. Why? Because you are trying to adapt to school, you're trying to meet new friends, make new friends and everything. And you will realize actually there's this so-called like it's almost like a honeymoon period, where a lot of times you're just, having a bit of fun, right? Or orientation groups trying to relax a bit. But before you know it, actually you realize, you have lost track of time and you have not really been following up in terms of all the, key information and materials and everything, and you're falling behind. Right. And then people realize, oh, actually 2 years pass very fast. In fact, now that I'm J2, I realize I fall behind in a lot of different things, find it very hard to catch up. Right. So that's something that's a very real challenge, in fact, for a lot of students, particularly if you're not very disciplined. So I would say that for students who feel that, really in terms of the academic foundation, they feel like, they are struggling, right? But they do still want to, do a JC type curriculum to university. MI will be a route that will allow them to manage that, right, at a more manageable pace. That's the first part. Second part is also in terms of the options available. So if you look at it generally at the JC level, usually they will only have, in terms of the art and the science stream, just the art and the science stream and together with some hybrid, okay? But it will still be a mix of essentially like science related subjects, math related subjects, and human subjects. But they do not offer like business and commerce type subjects. But MI is the school that will offer that, right? So they will offer business commerce related subjects, which can give you a bit of a leg up and a head start if you are looking at, wanting to do some of that in relation to business type modules when you go to university. That would be of relevance there. So I would say if you're looking at the two key difference, these are the two key difference, okay? A much more manageable pace in terms of a 3-year period. And then number two is in terms of the business commerce modules that they do offer. In fact, in terms of the admissions into MI is also more permissive. Why I say that is because if you look at the JC route is the L1 R5 route, right? And then the MI route is actually L1 R4, right? But ironically, actually, some of you may be aware, and you all should be aware also, especially if you have younger sons and daughters, that MOE is also moving towards the L1 R4 system over time. In fact, this is one of the last years where we are still on this track. Subsequently, there are a lot of changes. In fact, even at the tertiary level, there's also changes in terms of the rank points. So I will also touch a little bit on that so that you can also have a sense of some of this. Okay, so I do see in the chat some questions. I will take that later. Yeah, even including on some of the things relating to JCs and the subjects that you have to take. I'll touch a bit on that also. Okay, yeah. So that's for here, right? In terms of the universe. And as mentioned, in terms of the minimum requirements, you can see that here. So that's why I mean. So you see JC, the minimum requirements, you must not exceed 20. And there's also usually grade requirements for specific subjects. MI, you can see it's more permissive. So it's L1, R4, not exceeding 20. And then for the poly is EL R2, B2, not exceeding 26. And meeting the specific subject requirements as well, right? And so generally, actually, if you look at it here, right, some of you may wonder, right? So in terms of these grade requirements for specific subjects, what happens if you don't meet them, right? What happens if you don't meet them? And do you then not have admissions or, be shut out of the school? The reality is this, typically is that, if you do meet as a whole, the cutoff for the schools and you are able to enter the school, but it may be the case that you slip up in certain subjects, right? Maybe certain subjects maybe like English or maybe like mathematics, somehow you just didn't manage to meet that grade requirement. It's not that the school will just shut you out. So generally what happens is the school will still allow you to go in, right? But the reality is that of course it's not a free entry, right? So once you enter into the school, it's kind of like on an exception basis, where then at the end of the first year, so after you are done with the first year, what you have to do is that you then have to retake for that particular subject where you didn't meet the requirement. So for example, let's say for mathematics, you didn't meet the requirement, then you have to retake, right? That exam equivalent, the O-level exam equivalent. And let's say if you meet the requirement after that, then all well and good, right? Then you can continue on to J2. But let's say if you still don't meet the requirement, what's going to happen is that in J2, you will be posted to MI, right? So that's what's going to happen. That's essentially you can still stay within that JCMI track, but there will be this implication that will happen, right? And then after that, actually, you can still take the exam one more time, but if you still do not meet the requirement, then you have to move out of that stream, right? So that is the implication when it comes to things like minimum requirements for courses, okay? Yeah, so that's the key part just to highlight, okay? Okay, let me just also just take a look. Okay, I will be touching a bit later with regards to some of the questions live. Let me just continue on a bit first. Then after that, we'll go from there. Okay. Yeah. So strategies in school selection. So let me go through this first. Just remember now. So I've gone through broadly in terms of the timeline, in terms of the universe of schools. Now let's look through in terms of the selection process, right? The posting process itself. So first and foremost, as with anything, right, the posting selection process is based first and foremost on merit, right? So your academic merit, your performance, right? That is always the first criterion for posting. So that means your net aggregate score is that criterion, right? And for those of you who are looking at essentially JC, so just to give you an example, right? So what you all would have on your form is essentially the raw score, right? The raw score made out of your L1, R5 of all your scores across your subjects. And from your raw score, how do we derive the net score, right? The way to do that is we then minus away the bonus points that you get. So some of you here may have bonus points depending on how well you did for your CCA, right? If you have an excellent grade, that will be -2. If you are applying to a schools that have affiliation, there will be another -2 points. And also including like, higher mother tongue. So if you took higher mother tongue, that will be another -2, but for a maximum of a -4 points lah. So that's how we look at it, right? So if you look at your gross raw score minus your bonus points, that's how we get your net score. And the net score determines a lot of that entry, right? Whether you are able to get into a school, right? And so that's one of the key part, right? That's what you all need to recognize, okay? And of course, it also is a matter of, like demand and supply, right? So the number of places available in the course, right? How many applicants are applying there and their scores also, right? So of course, the one with the better score has a greater preference, right, in terms of going to that school, right? And also in terms of your course choices, okay? And here is perhaps where I will clarify a bit like how it differs here when we look at a tiebreaker, right? So some of you who been through the primary six posting exercise, you have heard of tiebreakers also, right? But one thing that I want to emphasize here is that the tiebreakers used at that post-secondary level is a bit different from, or rather, I would say quite different, right, from the tiebreakers that are employed at the primary six level. So how does it differ? I will explain a bit more. The idea here is that you can see, let's say you have two applicants with the same net score, because you see, right, first and foremost is on merit, right? So the one with the better net score, assuming that there's only one last place in the school, the one with the better net score should go in, right? But let's say if the both of them have the same net score, that means both of them have the same net score of say maybe 9, right? Then what happens, right? If there's only one last place in the JC, that's where the tiebreakers will come in, right? And the tiebreakers that come in works like that. They are in order. So the first is citizenship status, right? So the one with being a Singapore citizen will then have preferential access compared to somebody who is not a Singapore citizen, right? Next, and this is the part that's a bit different from the PSLE primary school posting exercise. So this part here, just to highlight, so this one you don't have it at primary six last time. But here, the next tiebreaker is actually what we call as your gross score. That means your raw score. That means if I look at, say for example, both of you, maybe you want to go to NY, right? And then you have like a 7 or something and you're tied, right? So then what next in terms of your net? So next they will look at your raw, right? So let's say you're both tied on 7, you're both Singaporeans, then what next? They will look at your raw score. So let's say if somebody's raw score is like a 9 and another person's raw score is like a 10, the one with the raw score of 9 will enter, right, the school, right? So that's how it will work. Okay, so that's a bit different from last time already, right? So you see in PSLE there wasn't such a thing as raw score, but right now there's this thing, right? There's the raw score. Okay, then after that you can see after that second option is done, then that's where we come to the third one, which is computerized balloting. So let's say, for instance, you are both having the same net score of 7. You are both Singapore citizens. You all both have a raw score of 10, right? Then there's no more tiebreaker. The last tiebreaker essentially is computerized. That means they will just do a computerized balloting, and then they will see, who will then enter the school, right? So that's essentially how this works, right? How this works. Okay. So that's essentially how you look at it. In fact, if you kind of look at it, right, if you want to visualize how it works in terms of the algorithm, a very simplified way of looking at it is you can just think of it as you have a whole cohort of post-secondary students who all finish the O levels, right? You can just think of it as I kind of rank them, right from the very first guy, the guy with the best overall score, right, to the very last guy, right? And from there, then we go one by one, simplistically speaking. So if you look at it, so the first guy get first dips, I'll look at his choices. So understandably, then he must definitely be able to get his first choice, right? Because he's the first guy. Then I go to the second guy, right? Our second guy, I will look at his choices, right? And then I'll give him his slots accordingly. But you can see over time, what's going to happen is that over time, the school starts to fill up. And then we have to start to move down the choice. That means, let's say, if I look at this guy now, I see his first choice. Okay, maybe his first choice is Raffles, RJC. But RJC, Raffles, RI, right? RI is all filled up already. So don't have, I'll go on to the second choice, right? If second choice, maybe Hwa Chong or filled up, don't have, then I'll go on to the third, right? So that's how it works. That's a simplified way of looking at it, right? So that's the part here that is important to note, right? So there are some slight differences, right, between this right now and also in terms of like, in the past when you did like the PSLE scoring. Okay, so that's one thing that I wanted to clarify. What does it mean in terms of the, okay, so a very important nuance. Okay, there is some complication here, but I thought I can clarify a bit. Does order of school choice matter? Okay, so there's a quite an important nuance is that I would say at PSLE, order of school choice matters in that you use it as a way to beat out another student in times of tiebreaker. Okay, that is for the PSLE. But at the secondary level, it doesn't really work like that, right? So you can see no longer is it the case that the choice order becomes a tiebreaker, right? You see? So that's the key difference I want to clarify. But nevertheless, choice order is still important. Why? The logic behind that is that if you ask yourself, right? So you are a student, and I'm putting in my choices of schools. The way I should think about it in terms of why choice order matters for myself is that I would definitely want to put the schools that I or the courses that I prefer the most right at the very top. That's how it matters. Okay, and why does it matter? Because you can look at it this way, right? So if I assign to you, I'm the algorithm, I assign a school to you, I'll be looking at you and I'll be looking at your school choices from the top down, right? So I'll look at your first choice, right? If you get your first choice, all wells and good, you will just get that already, right? So that's why in that regard, the school choice, the course choice is still important, right? Because if you don't put the one that you want the most at the front, you may run a risk of getting another school that you don't really want, right? You may get like let's say for example you put like a safety school right at the very first choice, right? What's going to happen is you are very likely to just get that school. Then you won't even consider the next second choice, third choice, and the fourth choice, right? So in that case, the choice order is still important in so far as essentially what you have to do is the ones that you want the most, you have to put it right at the top. Okay? So it's the first for your consideration, right? So that's how it's still important.
Okay,
But in
okay,
terms
okay.
of that
Yeah.
PSLE format where that choice order beating out another student in terms of tiebreaker, it doesn't work like that because if you look at the tiebreakers there, it's not in that regard. Okay? So that's something. Alvin, you wanted to add something, is it?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Just to get a sense of the audience here, right? I want those of you who are interested in going to poly, can you raise your hands? Because you see, times have changed. When I was studying in JC or university for that matter, very few students come from the poly. But remember, I before I joined my stretcher, I was actually after I left the finance industry, I was actually a poly lecturer for 4 years, and that was in the years 2003 to 2007. I joined my stretcher full time in 2007. Now, those times in those 4 years, the scene has completely changed, and that was like 20 years ago, not to mention now. Okay, so the reality is that 20 years ago, even the poly students coming in, many of them had the choices to go to JCs, but they opt to go to poly. So I think this is important. So if you look at the government statistics over the last couple of years, it is pretty consistent. Over 60% of all poly students in the system right now, they are eligible to go to poly route, but sorry, they are eligible to go to JC, but they opt to go to poly. So this is something which is it is, I won't say that JC is better. It depends on the route you want to take. And I give you a scenario. That's why we need to have a sense. Let me give you a scenario. I got a perfect example. Why perfect example? Next time we're going to invite students to share, okay? I have a good friend. This friend, we were schoolmates in secondary school. We were schoolmates in JC. Okay, so we have known each other for the longest time, and coincidentally, he has three kids. Three kids, triplets, all in the same year because they're all my special students. Now you see the unique situation. So I tell you what happened because there was an ironic twist here. So these three kids, they're all different. Triplets, one boy, two girls. Okay. So at that point of PSLE, the one of the kids was not so matured or not so intellectually motivated. Okay. So let's put it that way. but the results were still pretty good. So I tell you what happened to the three kids. There's a reason why I want to show this example. Huh? So the three kids, PSLE, the boy did well enough. He went to RI. Okay, so he went to RI for 6 years up to A levels. The girl went to NJC. Okay, did so IP system again for 6 years. Both took A levels. The youngest, the eldest one, went to Nanhua. Okay, so went to Nanhua O level track. Now what happened was this. Remember the RI guy and the NJC guy didn't take, and the NJC girl didn't take A levels. Sorry, didn't take O levels. Only one of the triplets had to take O levels because O level route. Now, based on the grades were okay. They were not exceedingly fantastic, but okay. And she wanted to explore herself, and she found that the JC route, which is, to be very frank, so I want everybody to be under no illusions. Once you go O level, okay, let's talk about the whole education system, right? When you take your PSLE, people say that it is a high stake exam. It cannot be true. It is an important exam, but it's nowhere near as important as your O levels. Okay, so when you go to from P6, you jump to the secondary school system, you double your subjects, and the difficulty also doubles, right? So the rigor is more. So definitely secondary school is more difficult than primary school. But the reality is now this, if you take, okay, so there are two different systems here. Whether you take the A levels, whether you take the IB diploma, and whether you go to the JCs. Oh, sorry, and whether you go to the polys. This will in general be for most of you, right? And the biggest leap which you have will be practically if you take the A levels at the JC. So I want to tell you the realities here. Okay. The reason why I want to tell you is that if there's a different route for everybody, the poly route is not inferior. I'm going to bring two examples actually so that everybody needs to have a sense so that they are not too fixated on certain ideas. So I'm coming back to this girl. This girl went to poly, went to Singapore poly because the father came to discuss with me. I said, fine, I think this is the best route. Given the current situation, I think the poly route gives her the best chance to excel. And true enough, she went to the poly route. She was top two in the whole poly. And the beauty of being the top two in the whole poly is that right now a lot of university places opens up to you. Okay, because everything is a function of grades. So the irony of the situation is that in fact she has a lot more options compared to her RI sister, RI brother, and NJC's sister, because at the tertiary level wise, she actually did better. Okay, so this is the reality. And this is a conscious decision by the government. In the past, poly students, 5% enter university. But when I was a lecturer there, it increased to 20%. Conscious decision. But right now, it's at 20%. So more and more students are taking the poly route. I give you another example. This was a Crescent Girls School. Okay, this Crescent Girls School, this girl, because I know her quite well. She came from a single parent family. So this is real, you see. That's why I want everybody to see this opportunity. So don't be shy if you want to go to poly. You just raise your hands. Then we take it separately. Later, I give you my phone number in case things are not covered. So what happened to this girl? This I actually wanted her to give a talk, but right now she's not in. So this girl, I tell you what happened. She was a Crescent girl. She was a Crescent girls. She scored 6 points for O levels. So even though her father cannot speak English, the irony is that she's pretty gifted in languages. So she got A1 in English, A1 in A1 in Chinese, A1 in literature, 2 maths, 1 chemistry. She got a 6 A1s. So she technically could go to any school she wanted. So again, they came to discuss with me. So she told me, Mr. Kuek, I think JC is really tough for me. I'm not the really, really studious person, which is true. I'm not saying that JC stuff is relative to your conviction, is relative to your discipline, you know? So everything is relative. JC, some of you may find easy, some of us may find tough. Same thing like poly. Some of you may find easy, some may find tough. Everything is about having the good attitude and to practice hard. I'll tell you what happened to this JC student, this poly student. So initially, she was very adamant, right? 6 A1s, she could go to any JC she want, but she didn't. She wanted to go to the poly route. So the only thing which we have to discuss right now, I asked her father to come. So we spoke in Chinese. So at least the father also is informed. She wanted to enter a logistics course in poly. But I told her no. Why are you entering a logistics course in poly? That if you want to work in Lazada, you want to work in Shopee, you don't need a degree or to, it's just like that. So don't waste. And if you look at the grades, logistics course is a course which nobody wants. I said that given your situation, this is what I suggest. You try law because I look at the languages. She's pretty strong and she can speak well. So I said that okay, why don't you do, not why don't. I would strongly recommend that you do law and management. Okay? So she did law and management. And you guess what happened? She did well. She got offered a law place in SMU, which she never thought was possible. She never thought it was possible. The father was shocked. Okay, but I told her we choose the relevant course, a lot more options. So it depends on what type of student you are, right? So if you go to the poly route, definitely let us be under no illusions. Poly route is a lot less competitive. 100%. I won't miss my words, okay? 100% a lot less competitive than JC. Okay? But if you do well, more opportunities open to you. That's why I just want to have a sense because right now we've been talking about JC. I just want to get a sense who wants to consider the poly route. Raise your hands. Raise your hands. Three, four. Okay, so the majority is going for the JC, which is perfectly understandable. Okay, for those who are going poly, remember, I believe that Saturday we're having a poly talk, right? Weilun, right?
Yeah,
Which I will
correct.
conduct.
Yes.
So you
Yeah.
can ask me any questions you can because the advantage was that I was a poly lecturer, and in fact, many of my friends they are still there. Okay, yeah, but it's fair. Okay, so we can go back to the JC.
Yeah, can. Thanks, Alvin. Yeah. So, so I'm back to my screen sharing. I believe I should be on the slides now. Maybe I'll just take the chance to answer some of the questions in the chat too as we go through this. I think it's quite opportune. Um, Okay, this one here with regards to net score and beating out the gross score. So let's say you're looking at essentially these two students lah. Let's say you have a net score of 5, the other is 6, but one is gross 9 and the other is gross 7. Definitely, right? So the one with the net score of 5 will win out the one with a net score of 6. It's always the net score that is the key primary determinant. The gross score only comes in later. If let's say their net scores are both the same, they are both Singaporeans, then the gross score will kick in as a tiebreaker. Okay? But remember, in terms of the first and foremost determinant is on the basis of the net score. In part, if you look at the way they think, is factoring in number one, your academic performance, but also recognizing that there are other bonuses lah that you have gained along the way, right? Be it in terms of the CCAs and all that as well, right? So that's the thing to note. The next one here, okay, in terms of the calculation of local uni, I will talk a bit about that later when we talk about the uni choices and also in terms of not uni choices in terms of the courses and what it means for the uni points, right? And also in terms of the H2 and H1 subjects, right? I will cover a bit on that later. In terms of the okay, so this particular part here, um, okay, so I would say if you really look at it this way, it also depends. If you're looking at top local uni, I think there are some considerations, right? The few considerations here is first and foremost also is apart from JC. I think the more important consideration is how you do in the school. Right, and I don't mean it in a cliche way. So the way we look at it, especially if we look at it in terms of applications to uni, they are looking at number one, what is your A-level results or your IB
Yeah.
results, right? How do you do for that? And number two, what was your portfolio like, right? In terms of your CCAs, in terms of your leadership and everything. So I think putting aside, be it in terms of the JC, the specific JC itself, is rather what you do there, right? In terms of your performance and also in terms of your profile, right? So that's the part that is more important. Especially if you are looking at areas even like admissions to more competitive faculties, like even like medicine and all that, they will be looking at your portfolio, what you have done, and all that as well, right? So I think that's one of the more key parts, and I think that also links to the point that if you really look at it, especially when you look at the JCs, you're looking at a much smaller universe of JCs now, and if you look at it really, a lot of times it's what you make out of your life there, there's also the case that, sometimes people feel that some JCs that they feel are more competitive, then things may turn out better if I go to those so-called more
Yeah,
competitive JCs.
yeah.
But it's not really like that also, because it also depends on how well the students can adapt there, whether there's a good fit between them and the culture and all that also. So that's also the other thing that I wanted to touch a bit about.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah.
At this
Yeah.
point, I
Yeah.
want
Go
to
ahead,
add in.
Alvin.
Yeah, and thank you, Weilun, for sharing. At this point, I want to add in something because I see the chat queries, right? So, and it is a very common question. Should I go to this JC or that JC? Should I go to this JC or this JC? Should I go to VJC, TJC, NJC, RI, Hwa Chong, whatever? Should I go to Catholic JC? Should I go to ACSI? So forth. Standard questions. Now, I want to tell you the reality because people always have a perception that, you go to this JC, you ultimately get the good grades. These are common scenarios. If you think that, so let me give you a very common scenario. It's not isolated. You can have RI. I say it's common. It's not isolated. When I say it's common, trust me, it is common. We all came from the system. Okay, we all came from Weilun, me, Moses, we were all from RI. Moses is there. We were all from RI and we were scholars. So we know exactly how it works, okay? So the reality, even right now, I give you an example. And why did Weilun talk about is what you do in the school that ultimately matters. You can be from RI. So I tell you what happened to that student, okay? That student I told you from RI, right? One of the triplets, right? I think his grades were pretty not ideal. Let's say it's pretty not ideal. Okay? Pretty not ideal. But if I were to compare to, let's say, another one of my students from Catholic JC, may not be as well as RI, but this person, this girl, gets 3 A's. You compare the RI student with this girl, it is a no contest. Okay, it is literally a no contest. Your JC is your branding is only good as long as you do well in it. So if you think that everybody in RI, everybody in Hwa Chong does well, wrong. Okay, you only see the really good top performing students. You don't see the bad performing one, which is not a small number. So I want everybody to do this. So you choose a JC, there's no right or wrong, okay? It must be a JC, okay, and a very important part I want all of you to consider, very, very important, because JC is not a joke, okay? Distance does matter, okay? Why I say distance does matter? Let's say, between, I'm just giving you one example. Between, let's say, NJC and TJC. Okay. No doubt some people may think that NJC is more competitive, so wants to go to this NJC. But let's say you are staying in the east. Okay, you are staying in the east, and TJC is like 20 minutes away from you. You are going to make 1.5 hour journey to NJC every day, around 2.5 hours. I really think this is not a good good use of our time. The reality is that JC for A levels, I repeat A levels you may have less subjects, but the depth is crazy. Okay, I repeat, the depth is crazy. So right now at O levels, some of you may be taking 7, 8, 9, 10 subjects. When it comes to A levels, less than half the subjects, but I can assure you the difficulty level is at least 4 times. Okay, so the rigor is real. So I want everybody to consider that. So you choose a JC. So I will not tell you that this JC is better. It really depends on what you do to school. I can be from Jurong Junior College. I get 2 A's. I go to Hwa Chong, I get 3 C's, 2 B's, 1 C. Which one comes first? University? Definitely. So ultimately, this is exactly what we mean. And these are not isolated cases. That's why we have to be aware of the realities. It really matters what you do in the school. True, some schools are more competitive. So in terms of the number of top students, they always have more. Correct? It's just the way it works, right? If the school is more competitive, they have more top students per se. But top students is how many percent? 5 to 10%? You haven't seen the bottom 30%. You haven't seen the bottom 40%. That's when you realize all these things don't matter. So we're giving you practical advice. Okay? I always mention it is really, and I cannot stress this enough. Okay, so you go to a school, so whatever school you go to, whatever GC you go to, very important. A few things must happen so that everybody. And why we are talking about this right now? Because the subjects you choose do matter. It becomes more critical now because the subjects you choose would give you pathways to the university courses you want to attend. So if you choose certain subjects, you are off the radar. Let me give you a simple example. If you're very because at this point in time, not all of us are very sure. If you're very certain that you don't want to do any science courses, fine. You're really science, then you go into the humanities art stream is fine. But the reality is that then you're stuck. You're stuck in that pathways. If you don't get into any of the courses you want, then you end up in certain courses which you don't want. So we need to consider this carefully. And why do I say this matters? Does it matter? Yes. Because if you choose the more competitive JCs, the reality is that the cutoff point is lower. The faculty places are also more competitive, right? So there is no right or wrong lah. Okay, I'm just telling you these are the practical realities to consider. Okay, Willen, back to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alvin. Yeah,
Hey, sorry,
so
Weilun, if I
yes,
can
go ahead. Yeah.
if I could just interject. So hi everybody, my name is Moses. Um so just now Alvin mentioned because of the intensity of JC, actually the distance matters. So if Weilun, if you can open up the Cher AI link.
JI, so we came up with this tool, right?
Yeah, so I mean for at MindStretcher because we have talked to so many students, and we always see the same biases, misconceptions. Okay, so we thought we would just put together some things to help lah. Okay, so the first thing here is you can see the cutoff points over the years if you scroll down. Okay, so this will give you a sense lah of where things are headed. Of course, not exact science, but this is a lot more stable than I think the primary school site. Okay, so feel free to go to cher.ai/schoolguide/JC dash cutoff point COPS. Okay, this one, the link, can we just put it into the Zoom chat as
Yeah.
well? So easier for people
So
to click.
yeah, so all of you should just take note of this. This is JI is a mind stretcher initiative. Okay, so going forward, there are a lot of things which are going to go in, including your JC general
Mm,
paper, JC Math. So please bookmark this. Please make sure, and these are free resources for everybody because we're
yeah,
going to try to help as many people as possible. Okay,
yeah,
so please make sure you all bookmark this. So, and many secondary school, I mean, many primary school students have benefited from this because we put in a lot of resources and we're populating it. Akan datang coming soon will be the
yeah,
JC
yeah.
stuff. Okay,
Um,
very important.
so I mean, I wanted to quickly just introduce some of the areas or so. So Weilun, if you can scroll down, scroll down further. Yeah, so because Alvin mentioned that um, the distance matters. So actually, we also find that some of the students they find it very leceh to go and check their distances to all the JCs. So over here, actually, we help you search across all 17 JCs, both the public transport timing as well as the driving timing, lah. Okay, for those of you who are lucky enough that your parents will send you. Okay, so um, please feel free to use it. Okay, the second big thing I wanted to quickly mention is that I have put a link to our MindStretcher Junior College community in the chat. Okay, so like Alvin mentioned, if I mean tonight we will not be able to cover everything. Okay, we'll try to cover the most common areas, try to be as helpful as possible. So of course, if you guys have questions, again, please keep putting into the chat. Very helpful for everybody. Okay, but if you have further questions, you can always message into the junior college chat too. It won't just be for this JAE period. Since a lot of you are interested in the junior college route, we will be actually MindStretcher is launching a couple of junior college programs next year. This year, 2026. But even before those courses come formally online, like Alvin said, we have a lot of experience helping people ad hoc already lah. For example, we understand how people can get a distinction in GP. We understand what it takes to start to do well at math, chem, all the usual subjects that you will likely take if you want to keep your options open. So I encourage you just click the link, join. There's no obligations there. At the very least, it's a place where you can ask further questions and we can help out. And then as and when things become available, we'll also share it there. Okay, so I just wanted to make a plug for these two things. Maybe back to Weilun and Alvin.
Yeah, thanks very much, Moses and Alvin. Yeah, so just to highlight, so I think for the students who are asking, I think there were quite a number of related questions on the choices of schools and the cutoff points, right? Yeah, so I thought maybe there's a few things to clarify here, which is interesting, and you actually can see the trends from here as well. So the way to think about cutoff points, I think first and foremost, how do we think about cutoff points? Cutoff points is the score of that very last student, right, who managed to enter into the school and take up that very last vacancy in the school from last year. So if you're asking, is it going to be necessarily representative of this year's cutoff point? It may not be exactly the same, right? But it does provide a good guidance and prediction actually. And if you see actually from this particular site, right, where we actually consolidated all the scores across the years, there's really a few quite key takeaways that you can see from here, which is number one, the points are pretty stable, right? And even if they do change, it's typically like looking at just like plus minus one variance only, especially for JC, if you look at it. For poly side, it can change a bit more, right? It can change a bit more on the poly side. But on the JC side, actually, I can just scroll for you to see. If you look at the art side, you can see, right? So generally, even if they change, it's a plus minus one. And generally, of course, you also recognize that science is more competitive. So generally, for the equivalent stream in the same school, the science stream will be harder to get in, right? In terms of the cutoff score, right? So there's a few things to note here already, right? So number one, pretty stable, and even if they change, it's a plus minus one change. And what's noteworthy also is if you just look at just the very recent years from 2020 to 2025, even if they do change, it's usually trending down. That means it gets more competitive, right? So for example, if you look at Nanyang, 7 to 6. Nanyang, there's something very interesting. So if you look at all the schools, if we just look at 2024 to 2025, right? There's really only one that had that bump up. So you see the rest, either they were the same or they drifted, down a bit, right? They drifted down a bit, but he actually had that bump up. Why? I mean, it's just a speculation. But I think in the past, right? So if you look at the school itself, I think there were school-specific considerations where, there was flexibility. I think some students recognized at that time that, there was flexibility in terms of the courses that you can take. So there were actually people last time who went in on art stream, but they could take science-related subjects. So in the end, when they were examined, they were actually like essentially examined like science stream, but they got in via arts, you see? So to some students, they kind of thought of it as, in the past when they tried to enter, they wanted to go in, they could not get in via science, they went in via arts, right? But since about 1 to 2 years back, that thing has been closed already. So there isn't that flexibility anymore. And I suspect that is probably one consideration. I mean, there could be others that you can see that actually lead to a drift up, right, for Nanyang, right? It's a very interesting observation. If you look at the rest, they don't really have that much of it. If anything, the rest are all trending down to become more competitive, correct? And generally, that's going to be the case. So given that perspective, right, then you will see if it's pretty stable and at most variance plus minus one. And generally, if you look at recent years, it's all trending down. I would say that that would be quite a good anchor point if you just look at 2025 for where you are going. And I think there were a few questions on that in the chat, right? With regards to VJC dropping, and there was one, I think question wise was with regards to the Nanyang one, right? So if I just put down on this one, I think it's this one here. So I just repaste in the chat. I would say that for things like that, it's really asking yourself then. So like in this particular case, right? So you say you are at a net 6, and of course the cutoff was 5. And if you look at just generally for science stream last year from Nanyang, it has been 5 for a couple of years. So you just look at the trend from 2022 all the way to 2025, it's all 5. Right? What's the likelihood that it will trend up? Right? I would say that the chances are not that high, but I think that's where you have to ask yourself also, right? Is it worth a shot? Like, how much do you want to try to go into Nanyang? And if it's really a school that you feel like you want to try for, then I would say that you should go for it, because if you don't put it there, then there's no chance at all, right? And I feel that it is within that boundary for a stretch school. I would feel that if you just look at JC, just looking at it realistically at the trend, anything that is plus two, that means you're off by two. I think there's not much of a shot at all already. But one, I think there is still a chance for you to try, right? If you do want to try. So I think to this student, I think the question is how much do you want to give it a shot, right? Is it really a place that you want to try for? And if you feel that it's a place that you want to try for, and given that you're just 1 point off, it's possible for a shot lah. I mean, for as a short as a stretch school. But the important part is then for your rest of the schools, it's important that you have target schools that are aligned with your cutoff, I mean with your net score, and also safety schools. So you always have something that you can fall back on. So I think that's the part that you have to recognize. Okay. So that's the thing. And interestingly, from here you can see, I mean, we don't have a crystal ball. We are not going to be able to say definitively whether something will drop or not, but you can actually see some of the trends here already, right? Like for example, even for VJ, some of you were asking about VJ 7. I think in recent years, 2024, it dropped to 6. This year is about at a 6 or so. So that will be a reference point for you all too. Okay. Yeah. So that's the key part. Then now let me go back to the slide.
Okay. But that's the one. Sorry, William. I just want to highlight one important factor, which is important for all students to know.
Yeah.
You see, you know, it's exactly like what we always say, right? We all develop at different stages. So we may have different PSLE grades, we may have different O-level grades. So what is important to do? Because if you can you go back to the ranking again? I want to highlight those two schools. If you were to look at PSLE right now, would you all agree that schools like Dunman High, because these are IP schools, schools like Dunman High, schools like National JC, schools like River Valley, PSLE cutoff points are low because considered very, very popular. So they take in a certain number of students with a certain score and that's it. But you realize, why is it JC at this level, the scores are higher? The point I'm trying to say is this. You may be going to Hougang Secondary School right now, but if you do well, you can beat many of these IP students. I'm saying this as a fact. I'm saying this anytime. This is from my own personal experience. Okay, anytime. This is not exact science, but it's a gut feel, which statistically I'm quite certain that I'm more or less correct. If you get 7 A1s, 8 A1s at your O levels, I am very certain you're going to beat at least 85% of all IP students everywhere. It doesn't matter whether it is from RGS, it doesn't matter what's of Hwa Chong. I'm quite sure 85% you're going to beat them flat. Okay, yeah, it is just the way it goes. So I want everybody not to be discouraged. Whatever your grade, so you may not have done so well at your O levels now, don't worry. We still have a chance if you go to the JC, if you go to the poly, and you have a fresh attitude. Anytime you jump to a new school, it is you start a new page. Very important. So I want everybody. So if you did well, congratulations. If you didn't do as well, no problem. It is still not the most critical milestone yet. The most critical milestone is now your poly or your JC. This now becomes, correctly said, a little bit more high stakes. Okay, you agree? PSLE is nothing. Because if PSLE is the correct measure of all achievements, very simple. There is no reason why River Valley High should be so low. Do you agree with me? This is just like that. Trust me, trust us, we have seen all types of students. Okay, this is what I always say. Whatever your grades in PSLE, you start from secondary school. If you don't think you have done so well in JC, no problem. For your O levels, no problem. Go to a JC where the pace suits you better. Okay? Because you see, we must all understand, everybody must have this mindset. At the end of the day, regardless of which JC you go to, you take the same exam. Why I say this is important? Because if you go to a JC where they teach you a lot of advanced stuff, and because of the number of competitive students, they may push higher and faster, then you struggle there, you become demotivated. This is not the school for you. Okay? Go to a school where you can be properly motivated to learn at your own pace. Very, very important. Okay, I say this. At the end of the day, RJC, at the end of the day, what matters if you look at the university and admission score for you all, you are still under the, the university metro will be blind towards all your JCs. The only thing which matters, blind to your JCs, blind to your polys. The only thing matters are what type of subjects you take, what is your score, full stop. Okay, so that's why I want everybody not to be too fixated on this. Go to a JC which you believe offer you the best chance to do well with a reasonable amount of pressure. All of us need pressure. Why I say that? Because if you don't have pressure, there's no motivation to study. With no motivation to study, it's very difficult to explain. But let me tell you, let me just give you all the heads up. Everything in JC, there's no magic formula. The magic formula is only this. Make sure you know your past year papers. You can go to Hwa Chong, they can be a very difficult paper, but if it's going to be more difficult than your A levels, may not be the most ideal. Okay, this is the reality. Obviously, you can challenge yourself, but as long as you can do the JC papers like the A levels, we are done and dusted. Okay, so this is why we're coming with the JC system. There are certain things we need to be exam smart. Okay, exams. It's good to know certain things, but as long as you do some basic requirements, you will do well, 100%. So that's why attitude, your discipline, and the resources you have comes into play. Because JC they moves at a very fast pace, and because most of very fast pace and different number of different levels of students within all JC, you can see that the range is quite wide. Even if you're in the same class, it doesn't mean that all are the same ability. No, you find that why I say this because even if you're the same grades, you realize that there comes a time when the level at a higher level would now be clearly differentiated. This is the truth. Okay, so that's why I said don't be discouraged. If you don't not do so well, go to a JC. It doesn't mean that you got to go to all the JCs on top. Go to a JC which suits you, and you can do well. That is all the better.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I want to echo this point from Alvin. So I think ultimately today is not about crystal ball gazing, lah. Okay, anybody who tells you they can do that is also selling you snake oil. Okay, what we want to do, why we take the pains to put this together, and also organize these seminars is we don't want you to make a choice that is ill-informed. Okay, so if you have questions or where is the point going to go next year, is like trading the stock market, right? You see the lines going up, you see the lines going down. If you think that the line is going to go up next year because of something, it's anybody's guess. Okay, but what Weilun said in our experience, +2, don't bother. +1, maybe worth a shot. But actually, what Alvin said is critical to appreciate. That's why I want to restate very clearly. This is the end of your pre-tertiary education. Okay? Which means there's a final exam that is the same everywhere. There is no intermediate thing that really matters now. Only the A level will matter at the end of your JC career. So then you really got to go to a place which is going to support you for the next 2 years. So I want to address 3 points here. On the academic side, you only have 2 years, and trust me, I just visited RI yesterday and spoke to their head of GP as well as head of the talent development group there. He meets all the talented students, but he's also been at RI for almost 15 years already. Still, there are many, many students in RI that struggle. There is nothing magic in the water. Okay? And the best students, he also told me, I think for me, I was his first President Scholar student. But I did not get there because I was naturally good at it. When I first started, the first paper he marked for me, he gave me an E. Okay, but what did I do? We read a lot. I read a lot of stuff because I figured out, okay, for GP, I probably would like the businessy or econs kind of question that will come out. So I'll just make a point to read. And I read what I like. I read some books about how EDB built Singapore. If I see an interesting article about how some rare llama in the mountains, their coat is actually used for cashmere, I'll read that too, and I just read and read and read. Within a quarter, nobody in the class can touch me because they are trying to learn from class. Whereas if you learn on your own, how can you compete, right? At the max, you spend 4 hours in school learning that subject every week. The moment you put in your own time, you will blow everybody out of the water. How to spend the time? Of course, that is the question, and that's why we set up that WhatsApp group, because we know quite a few of these ideas, but at the end of the day, you have to put in the work. Okay, so you want to choose something. Why do we say all this? You can say is simple, right? But why do we emphasize things like choose something that is suitable for you? It's because if you don't, then you make it very emotionally heavy on yourself. You see other people being very, very strong, and then you feel discouraged. You think that you're not a good student, but no. at the end of the day, you can make whatever you want from your JC career. Okay, so the pace, you got to find a place that will support you, and then you need to know that most of the outcome in JC is going to be up to you, not because your school is especially good. Okay, the second thing, and just to support that, a lot of JCs are now all delivering their lectures virtually. Only the tutorial is in person. Okay, so again, like when I was at RI, most of the lectures, I guarantee you half of the lecture hall is sleeping. Cold aircon, the lecturer is droning on and all. You just see everybody just like that, like that, like that, all the time in the lecture theatre. And then now that it's virtual, it goes to show lah. Really, it's up to you to go and study. Okay, but the nice thing is that JC is all fair, and especially now back in my time, of course, we have all the promo papers of all the schools, the prelim paper of all the schools. The syllabus is very very stable, so you're not just working in 1 year. You can easily go back a few years, and I tell you that those past year papers, I practiced so much. When I was coming out to my A levels, I would just wake up around 5 a.m. every day, make sure I just write one GP essay, and then alternate, I write an econs essay. Even though sometimes I can get my tutor to mark, but the point is that after you study, you need some practice formulating your thoughts. Okay, so I'm always a fan of practicing. This is what will bring you there, not some magic words that your lecturer will say. Then now you guys have Holy Grail, right? And then literally all the JC notes are there. So don't don't make things harder for yourself. It is going to be a challenge. I think we want to make sure you guys go in eyes open, because like Weilun say, so many of our strong students, first 3 to 6 months, they think that they're in honeymoon and don't realize that after you spend 3 to 6 months in JC, you are 1 year away from your A level already. And it's super fast. So hit the ground running. Okay. But don't make it hard. Don't go and do like a 1.5 hour commute there and then back. It really, really takes its toll. Okay, so that's on the academics. Okay, you will control your pace, and you have all the tools. Even today, you have the tools to start doing well already. Okay, so the school, let's not overemphasize what the school gives you. Okay, two other points I want to make. Again, on why to free up time, because your CCAs really start to matter. Okay, it is not just to impress, your teacher. At this point of time, there's serious career things on the line already. There are scholarships, there are also university places, and these are generally something that will dictate at least the first few years of your career. Okay, and given the direction, not just MOE but the world is moving, academics can only take you so far. So your CCAs really matter. It is why that once you guys settle down in school, those of you who join the group, we will also conduct a short seminar on just talking through how to think about your JC career. It's quite crucial. In fact, there are many, many people we have counseled who think that they are on the right path, right? But they don't realize that even if you're very, very good at debates, even if you're representing school, but what really matters, what really helps you stand out when you really want to go overseas, when you want to make it into the competitive places in university, if you think you know what you want, then let's set the goal and then let's figure out a path to get there. Okay, but we're not going to get there by just doing the default thing, not thinking it through, joining the CCAs that everybody seems to be joining. If everybody who joins the popular CCAs makes it into the competitive places, then how come how come people don't, right? How come people don't make it into those competitive slots? The people who do make it into the competitive slots, they do something different. They spend their times meaningfully. Okay? Like for instance, for myself in university, we stopped doing all the in JC, we stopped doing all of the sort of like student leadership kind of stuff and started to do a lot more entrepreneurial things, a lot more creative things. Those were things that really helped me enjoy my JC. It was the first time I felt I was, doing what I really, really wanted of my time, but we still find a way to make it meaningful to society as well as the community. Okay, so we can talk about some of these ideas, but you really want to keep your time free, and you don't want to be swamped by a lot of emotional pressure, and you don't want to be commuting too much. Okay. Now, last but not least, I saw a lot of questions inside the chat about does the school matter for uni? Okay, so these are in general very sensible questions, of course, because like I said, this is the end of your pre-tertiary schooling already. Okay, so of course we need to think about what's gonna come next. So I would say if you're talking about those, I think over here, some people are also talking about overseas unis. There is definitely the statistic that places like RI Hwa Chong, and then to a certain extent like VJ, they are the places where a lot of like people make it more, no, not a lot, still a very small percentage of the whole population because these are generally large JCs, but quite a number of them make it into the overseas unis. But I wanted to mention something here. Just having gone through the system and now I caught up again with the talent development head, right? So it is not really that the school is looked upon. I also do interviews for Princeton. Okay, so I'm very, very familiar with how they do the selection. Lah. It is not really that the school is seen as like a holy place, that magically produces people. It's really, really not that. It is that in these schools, because of the pattern of their alumni, they generally are a bit more familiar with how to navigate the system. Okay, but rest assured, this same ability to navigate the system is also available to all of you if you really want to tap on it. You at the appropriate time, when you guys are past closer to your promos, we can talk with you guys. I think we are very, very familiar with how to navigate this lah. So there's nothing magic lah about these schools. You need to know how to navigate it. You need to know what these top universities are looking for. You need to know how to position yourself, and then you need to know how the system works, right? Things like your personal statement. Alvin here, between him and me, we have, him alone, at least 20, 30 people already. He has been advising to go into the top universities. One of them was my best friend last time. We went from somebody who was not even prepared to apply for some of the top universities, he got into Stanford. Okay, so we are quite familiar with this lah. So don't worry. What I wanted to quickly address is that having gone through the system, I don't think there's anything magic in the water at any particular JC. Okay, choose what you feel confident of, feel that you are going to be on stable ground, and then just know that more than any time in your schooling career, it is up to you already. Okay, but we will be here to support you. Okay, so maybe one last plug. Please join the junior college chat because otherwise it will be harder to stay in touch with all of you. Join it, and then as and when some of these questions start to come up, if you start to hear peers talking about it, you want to ask questions, please put it there. Then we can start to organize some of these events too. Okay. All right. So yeah, sorry for taking a bit of time, but it's something that I think without hearing it from people who have seen a lot of students go through, you may really over-index onto some of these names, and then I think it's not so healthy. That's what I see from some of the questions lah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Moses. Yeah, so actually coming back to the slide, so as I think Moses and Alvin have mentioned quite at length regarding the JC part, right? And so also just to highlight, so I think tomorrow actually we still have further webinars, and actually tomorrow's webinar is specifically on the JC pathway also. I think there are some more questions with regards to the JC part that I can take also with regards to some of the subject combination and all. So let me just cover that, and then we can go through some of the other questions. One thing to note is that you all will also be aware right now, actually, they are having the open houses, right? So several of the open houses have actually passed, but there are actually a few more that are coming up. So actually, if you all would like to take a snapshot of these are some of the ones that actually that are some of the one, of course, the ones from 13 to 15 is gone, but there's a few more like 19, 17 Jan that is coming up too. So that's where you can actually go down to the schools themselves. Because I think so far what you all have been doing is, you all can go to MOE School Finder, look at the information, look at the website, talk to your seniors. But my own perspective also is that nothing really beats really going down to the school. Not just looking at the booths and all, or the students, but also getting a chance to talk to some of the teachers, finding out from them, some of your own questions, particularly, let's say if you are looking at certain subject combinations, some of the prerequisites, what are some of the things that they can share with regards to the school culture. This will be helpful. And I think the best time to do that is really as part of the open house, right? So you can actually also consider some of that, right? There's a few more. Some of them have passed, but there's a few more that's actually coming up too, right? For the JCs as well, right? So that's the other part. This one I've talked about it just now, so I won't go through again, right? With regards to the cutoff points and also with regards to the utilization of schools. So here, I think the main thing that we just want to mention is, as far as possible, because you do have a number of choices, try to maximize your choice, right? So, put out all the choices as far as possible. And as mentioned, also just generally in terms of the selection principle, the one that you prefer the most. So if you look at it in terms of the alignment of your order of preference, the ones that should be you prefer the most should be right at the top, right? Should be at the top choices. That's generally in terms of the selection principles, right? And you can include stretch choices. So I like what we mentioned just now. We cannot predict for sure what was going to happen this year. But I would say that, generally, if you look at it, that plus minus one is probably where you can try. But of course, there's no guarantee, right? But if you do want to try, those stretch should be right at the top. Because if you just look at it logically, so it's just a matter of logic that if you don't put a stretch at the top, then you'll probably end up with something else first, right? Before you even come to the stretch school, right? So that's the other consideration. And finally, also because you do have a number of choices, do make sure to have in place this what we call as the target schools. So cutoff that's aligned with your net scores and also safety schools, right? So generally these are schools where the cutoff is about 2 to 3 points higher than where you are right now. So at least there's always something for you to fall back on, right? So I think some of you mentioned in the chat, and you all may have seen on TikTok and all some of those stories, right? Where maybe because they didn't put properly, or they in fact I saw this account where this person said she only looked at the first few choices. After that, the rest of the school she just anyhow put in. Then in the end, she end up not having any of them. So always make sure to have a balance, right? To have a mix of these target and safety schools, so you can fall back on them as well, right? Okay. The next part, right? So with regards to the approach, right? So I think for some of you here, hopefully many of you have already have a draft list, but I think this is also quite aligned with what we have been talking about. That as you look through, and especially since there are a number of places, and some of you may be even thinking between JCs and Poly, I think first and foremost, really start to consider, right? So in terms of your own learning interests, your own aspiration as well, where are you working towards, right? In terms of that. And then from there, really identifying then what are the candidate programs, what are the candidate courses that are aligned with your needs, right? Based on your own skills, your own aspiration. And that's where then you can overlay, right? So using like what we shared just now in terms of last year's cutoff point, not as a predictor, but as a kind of reference, right? In terms of how we can put in our school choices, and then after that you can shortlist and have that balance, right? So that will be generally the approach that you can take to go about that selection process. The key considerations for different pathways, I think just now as Alvin was saying, there are indeed some of you, I think, who has inclinations, right, for both Poly and JC, and you're wondering between the two. So I think perhaps here is that's where we can give a bit of perspective on that. And as Alvin also mentioned, actually previously he has experience working in the Poly itself. So a lot of direct experience in terms of the environment and the learning experience over there too. So I think if you look at it, just putting in view a few things, right, in terms of the statistics generally, in case you are interested. For the JEE exercise, right? So if you just look at the ones that have passed, generally it's about half that goes to Poly, 40% or so to JCMI, and then the last 10% to ITE. And generally each year also there is this group, right? So it's not like a cast in stone kind of route per se, but there are also people who do cross over from, like, for example, the JC route to the Poly route, and from the Poly route to the JC route also. And what are some of the considerations? So I think here, I think some of you may have also talked a lot about, university admissions and everything. And, a lot of times we do think of it as, the route is from JC and then you go to uni. But I think the other recognition here is that we do have Poly students who do get admitted to local uni as well. And in fact, if you look at it now in terms of just the statistics, right? In 2015, it was about 1 in 4. But that has since gone up, right, in terms of the students admitted to local uni, which is like 1 in 3. And generally, there are now more universities, right, both in terms of the local universities and also the places that are available for polytechnic students compared to 15 years ago. Of course, I must caveat that I'm not making a plug either way, right, for either options. I don't think that there's one option that's better or worse than the other. It really depends on the individual. But what's important here is we wanted to clarify that, in case you had some of these misconceptions, like, oh, if you go to poly, you cannot go to uni, right? Or if this is like that, this is like that. So we want to clarify, take the chance to clarify some of the misconceptions and get that out of the way to make sure that you are informed, right, in terms of the decision as you make your decisions, right, between the different pathways. So that is the focus over here, right? And of course, if you look at it in terms of that practical consideration, uh, if you look at it this way, right? So I would say generally, if you are looking at a pure JC pathway, I think I can put it across very factually, is that if you just go to JC for its own sake, that means after JC you don't go to uni, there's no value to that curriculum or whatever that you have learned from JC, right? The idea behind JC is that there is a pure focus, a lot of focus on academic rigor, and is you can think of it as it is that runway to university, right? So that preparation, that academic foundation that it gives you is useful insofar as you go to uni based on that, right? So if you do not go thereafter, actually then the JC route itself may not be something that is as useful in that sense, right? So the idea is behind that, right? In that it gives you that academic foundation to build you for readiness for university. That's how you can think about it, right? But for poly itself, actually is a bit different, right? So for poly, you can see actually there's a lot more direct, practical, industry/career type applications, right? In terms of the considerations, be it in terms of industry training, be it in terms of the different clusters, be it in terms of like internship opportunities, exposure that you already get. So even from the poly route itself, right, even without the university thereafter, right, there is already this practical workplace experience that you glean that you would otherwise not actually get from a JC type context. So I think here is where you then have to consider, right? So in terms of these two different settings, which one is the one that work for you, right? Be it in terms of your own learning style and also in terms of your own future aspiration also, right? And I think here is a few questions that you can ask yourself. So number one, your own interests and skills. What are the kind of industries and occupations you like to explore and you like to work as, right? And I think that's something that, and you will think about it this way, right? So you may think that is you are still fairly young, right? You feel like right now it's just after secondary school, but I think the truth also is that the runway also is a pretty short runway to after uni and then after that getting a job ready. There is a lot of implications if you work backwards. I think some of you also rightly noted, right? What I meant by that is like that because let's say you want to go into a certain field, right? Then it may make sense for you to be in a certain degree position in university. And what you need to recognize is that many of these degrees actually they may have certain prerequisites, right? In terms of the programs that you need to take at the JC level, right? So if you work backwards from there, actually what you do at JC in terms of your subject combination can actually determine, right? And actually like, influence what you do at uni that then influence the job that you eventually take. So there is a lot of direct implications, I would say, right? Of course, it also depends on the specific universities and the specific areas that you are keen to go into. For example, if you are going to very more specialized areas like engineering or versus more general areas, right? So for myself, I did economics in the past. So econs actually is a more generalist area, right? Compared to say like for example, engineering, right? So that's also the other thing. So it really depends also what is your interest, right? What is your occupation? What is the areas that you want to explore, right? Yeah, and that will actually affect. And as mentioned just now, I think also mentioned about the difference between JC and MI. So just to recap again, for JC side, right, they do not offer like the business commerce stream, so only the MI side actually offers that. So that's the other difference. Um, and then after that, like what we mentioned about polytechnic being more practice oriented, right? The skills for the workplace. So that's the part. So in fact, if you look at it this way, right? So if you look at the universities for JC wise, I would say working backwards from there is really useful to think about, what are certain programs, what are certain courses that you want to take at uni, and then working backwards from there, what does it mean in terms of the stream that you want to take at JC, right? Does a art stream or versus a science stream, which one, could work better for you in preparing you for that, right? For university. Because remember, JC is that path, is the natural prep pathway to university, right? Whereas for poly, I think, then it depends for poly whether you are interested in going to uni or you are interested more in direct workplace type aspirations and everything. If it's a workplace type thing, then I think it really makes a lot of sense to think about what is the work that you are interested in, what's the career that you're interested in, and then working backwards from there in terms of the subject clusters that would help, right? In terms of equipping you with the work skills for that as well, right? So I would say that that's probably the way to, like what I said, work backwards from there, right? In terms of uni that you want to go and the work area that you want, right? So that's the key part. I think some of you asked about the subject combination. So perhaps I will just, in case some of you may not be attending tomorrow, I'll just do a very short sharing, just a little part on the JC side. But I won't go into it as deep a dive because there will be another session tomorrow. But the main thing is perhaps I can touch a bit more in terms of some of the requisites and everything and what does it mean lah. So just a very quick one on that. So I think some of you were asking with regards to uni scoring, right, and how it works, and then also in terms of the subject combination. I want to tell you all actually, maybe just to share, there has been some changes to the JC system, right? So I think you may not be aware unless you have an elder sibling, and you may not know it until you go to JC itself and they brief you, right? But there has been some changes and it will affect your cohort. So what are the changes that has happened? Is that going forward, right? So if you look at it, they are changing the university scoring system, right? So a few things have changed. Number one, you all will know that there's actually something called project work in JC, right? So project work in the past used to be graded, right? It used to be considered like a H1 equivalent subject. But as of now, it has been converted into a pass-fail. So all you need to do is to take it and pass it, and that's it, right? It's not as, high stakes as in the past where you really need to, give it your best shot, do well for that and everything. So project work itself is something that has been, converted, right? That's the first part. The second big change that has happened in JC now is that in the past, right, if you look at it in terms of the counting of the scores of your content-based subjects towards your overall rank points or your university score, in the past, actually, they look at it as that four subjects. And usually what people do is they do three H2 and one H1, right? Some of you were asking, can you do 4H2? The answer is yes, right? So generally, if you demonstrate the aptitude, right, and that is usually seen from your scores from O levels, you can do 4H2, right? There's no issue with that. It's just that going over time, right, in that if you look at it right now, the system is moving towards a place whereby they want people to be less overtaxed in terms of managing exam needs, managing the syllabus. So they have changed things a bit. So in the past, actually, if you look at it, the four subjects contributed to the rank points, right? The university admission score. But right now, they have changed it to just three, your three subjects. And these three subjects will be the H2 subjects essentially. So the last subject, which people usually take as the last H2 or the H1, that one doesn't count, right? So that is quite a big change actually. So the last one doesn't count unless it improves your score. So that means if it improves your score, then you can count. But if it doesn't improve your score, then you don't need to count. That means you only need to count three subjects. So in a sense, what it's helping people to do is that it's helping you to say, okay, it's okay. Maybe four is a bit of a too much for you to focus on. So the fourth subject, you kind of do it as exposure, but the first three subjects is really where you would orient your effort in terms of exam focus, right? So that's one key part. And that's why you all will recognize now with your cohort going forward also, the rank points, the university score has been reduced. So in the past, it used to be 90. Now it has been reduced to 70, right? And what does it count? It count your three H2 subjects plus GP, which is the H1. Yeah. And then it's 20, 20, 20, 10. That's why it's 70, right? So 20 for each of the H2 for a total of 60 points, and then 10 points for the H1. right? And then for a total of 70 points. So that's how it works now. So to that, you will realize then, so to that question is it matter as much, right, in terms of these four subjects and everything? I think MOE gradually is moving towards a case whereby they want students to have that balance also, right? In fact, you all already start to see that even from the secondary, right, for your juniors, right, where they are moving towards the L1 R4 system. So the same thing is percolating through lah to the JC side. Okay, so that's the other thing that I wanted to highlight, right? So that's one key thing that will change for your yeah, so that's the part to note. Okay. Okay, so that's the other thing I wanted to highlight. Okay. Okay. And yeah, so okay, so in terms of some of the curriculum, I think there's a question whereby for IP students, are they already ahead of the JAE batch in terms of their curriculum? I think it will also depend really in terms of the school and in terms of the IP curriculum lah. So it is true that in some schools they cascade down. So if you look at it for IP in secondary school, right, they may cascade. That means what happens is something that they learn in Sec 3 in normal schools, they learn in Sec 1 and Sec 2. Then when it comes to Sec 3 and Sec 4, they may cascade some of the early A level content to Sec 4. One example is that, like in RI, some of the concepts on vectors they would put earlier into Sec 4. JC type vector content, right? They would do earlier, right? But again, it varies, right? It varies from school to school. That's the first thing. So it's not to say that you have to worry because you are going to a place where there are a lot of IP students, you will lose out to them, right? It's not really like that. In fact, I must say again, it comes back to the mindset, right? So putting aside like solid content and everything, which I would think really changes and varies from student to student. I think my own experience is, I mean, even in school, you will see that actually, there are students who come in from a non-IP background, right? But the reality is that they are no worse in terms of their scores, in terms of their ability to catch up compared to the IP students. Why is, I can give you a reason why, is because some of the IP students, for better or for worse, right, as they go through the IP route, I'm not saying it's the same for everyone, but there are some who came out like that, right? Because they do not have like the milestone exams and everything, right? Some of them may not really have that accountability or that discipline, right? To see through the rigor of secondary school life and transit to JC. So comparatively, compared to the guy who was not from IP but made it into that JC, that other guy was a lot more disciplined and he carries with him that discipline and motivation when he goes to JC. So even though you put aside, did they touch a bit on JC materials? Yes, maybe a bit here and there, but it's not going to be material, right?
Yeah.
But it's his mentality, it's his mindset, right? That same mindset that got him to the school is what is going to allow him to catch up to the crowd and to really even beat out the crowd. So I think that's the important thing that you all need to recognize here as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, at this point, I'd like to add on to what Weilun said. What Weilun said is absolutely correct. I want to add on a couple of things. First of all, you must know what happens in the IP system. But this is a very valid question because it also applies to the question about leadership, leadership, the JE, the IP divide, and so forth. Okay, first of all, you must understand IP system just means that you don't take O levels, but the system varies widely across the schools. Let me give you one example. In some IP schools, there is no difference between the O level and the IP. Every day they do the same thing, except for the IP, they may have two extra questions. Are these two extra questions going to change the world? No, it doesn't. Okay, first model. Another model, and I always say, just because the syllabus is hard, you always hear me saying this, just because something is very hard doesn't mean that it is good. Because only the super smart students can handle it, all the rest will suffer. So you see, it all depends on what type of student. So let me give you an example. I can absolutely tell you, 100%, this one there's no ambiguity, which is the hardest JC system? Without a doubt, RI, full stop. Full stop. There is no comparison. Okay? So RI is the hardest JC system, followed by Hwa Chong. Competitive? Yes. Harder systems? Yes. But does it make it better? Not necessarily. It depends on who you are. Why do I say this? Like I was talking to one of my top RI students. Okay, he just finished because he has been with my stretcher for like 7 years. So he's a top RI student, but he takes a number of subjects here at MS, right? So I was talking to him. He's now starting for his JC. So he was attending this maths class. So in this maths class, 7 students for a start. January, schools has not opened, right? January, 5 RI students because they don't by school, 5 RI students and 2 JC students. All of you know here right now, for those of you who took the O levels, right? Can the denominator, if you have a fraction, can the denominator ever be 0? Yes or no? Just put your answer. Yes or no? If you are doing mathematics or anything involving a fraction, can the denominator be 0? Yes or no? I'm sure you all know this, right? Can you divide? If you use a calculator, even if you don't know, if you use a calculator, you put 3 divided by 0, what do you get? You get undefined. Do you agree? Do you agree? Because you cannot have 0 as your denominator. Anytime you square something, a plus b bracket square, can that number be negative? The number cannot be negative. Do you agree? Anything square, all of you will know this. But surprise, surprise, the 2 RGS girls did not know. And let me tell you, is this an exception? No, it's common. So I want you to have this mindset, just because you do your O levels, if you're good grades, does it mean you're inferior to the IP students? The answer is no. The top IP students are very, very competitive, but the average IP student, this is my frank opinion, any good O level student is going to beat them without much trouble. Why? Because you all know your basic, because you all know your foundation. Okay? When the syllabus goes very, very fast, the reality is that if you lack your foundation and not fast enough, you're going to suffer. I see this among many IP students, especially those which are very competitive. That's why I'm telling you the reality of the situation, because all of us, Weilun, Moses, and me, we all came from the system. Okay? We all came from the system. And we were not your average RI guys. We were the top RI guys in our respective cohort. So there is a little bit different. So we're telling you the reality. So, and do I have students who come from, let me give you a simple example. I thought I was one of the better RI students. I was definitely among the top RI students in my cohort, top 5%, okay? In my JC class, and this was the sense of complacency. I saw this guy from St. Gabriel. Because my RI grades were pretty good, I was technically in the top class at RJC. Then there was this guy from St. Gabriel's Secondary. I said, this guy shouldn't be in this class. But let me tell you, in JC, I couldn't smell his feet. Okay, I'm telling you this is the truth. He may not be, so it doesn't matter that last time no IP system, but the reality is that every now and then all these students would exist. So all of us have got to believe in that, okay? So as long as you work hard, you pay your dues, you're definitely not inferior to the average IP student. I can almost guarantee you that. And let me give you an interesting statistics. You know, in the year 2011, the top A-level student with 9 A's, okay? Very seldom you see 9 A's, okay? The top A-level student of Hwa Chong with 9 A's was an O-level student from CHIJ, St. Nick's. Okay? O-level student from CHIJ, St. Nick's. So went in, beat all the Hwa Chong students, beat all the Nanyang girl students, beat all the other top O-level students, only 1 9 A's in that particular year. So everything is possible. Okay? So right now I come to the practical realities. So different IP system, different syllabus. So that's why I said, just because it's hard, they study in advance, RI and RGS, they study in advance, but if I'm struggling, it's no use to me. Right? So RGS may have the IP system strike numbers, but right now in JC, you don't know that your denominator cannot be 0. You don't know that anything squared is positive. I think these two girls are in really big trouble. Okay, this is my frank opinion. And there's no way they're going to survive the mathematics without getting a very, very bad grade. I can almost guarantee you this because I have seen many of this. Okay, so never look down on yourself. Okay, but now comes the practical reality about CCA. Let's talk about CCA, right? So you're taking me at IP. So now as I always tell students, you must know how your CCA leaders are chosen. How they are chosen now depends. That's why the first question when students come and see me, I ask them two questions. Find out, if you want the leadership plan, find out how are they chosen. Are they voted by the students in that club? Are they chosen by the teacher? Because the dynamics are different. Okay? But the reality is also real. If you go to a school where all the students predominantly, so let me give you a real example, right? If you, let's say you want to go to RI, you join a particular CCA when they are 80 and 90% all RI and RGS students. And if they had come from the similar club in secondary school, the chances of you getting the votes are slim. I'm also very frank with you. Do you agree? Unless you are a superstar. So it's different. If you're a superstar, you're a superstar. Let's say you got a chess team in RI combined. And let's not talk chess. Let's talk about another more common. Let's talk about debate. Okay, you are debate. You are so you have the debaters from coming. But if you, let's say you come from Hougang Secondary School, but you're the top debater in Singapore, you are very famous, you can outspeak all of them, then of course your chances increases. So there's no fixed rule. Okay, there's no fixed rule. But generally, if in terms of, but having said that, of course, everything is about engagement. So if you can go in there, you're very friendly, you're very sociable, people like you, there's still a chance. Like this year, all right, the Entrepreneur Club was usually the favorite. Usually an RGS girl will always hate the Entrepreneur Club over the years because they got a lot of RGS students. But this year, a boy from a not so well-known secondary school got the chairmanship. Why? Because he was very sociable. He knew how to win the votes. He talked to them, engaged them. So everything there's a chance. So there is no fixed rule, okay? But generally, if you go to a school where it's predominantly, yes, you probably have to overcome the odds. Okay, I hope that answers your question then. Okay.
Yeah, actually, on this one, I wanted to maybe just share a few ideas lah. Because this is also what we have been advising some of the top students. Since you guys are asking this question, I want to try to maybe just make a couple of suggestions, okay? So, I think a lot more so than last time, you can also make your own CCAs. Okay, but I don't mean starting student interest groups and things like that. I mean that uh, you can go and create your own achievements. Okay, like if you want to demonstrate leadership, CCA is really not the only way to do it. So, let me share a little bit about my own experience, and then I share a little bit about some of the things that I understand students in the top schools are doing now, because we are, as I mentioned, I'm also involved in the interview processes. Okay, so when I was in JC, yeah, in secondary school, I used to do things like prefectorial board, debates, things like that lah. Okay, so I am familiar with that track also. But in JC, I actually, decided that, okay, I want to try and do something different. I want to do what I'm really, really passionate about. And I trust myself to find a way to make it something that, yeah, for universities and for scholarship boards, they can understand lah. But let me just start with something that at least I'm passionate about, that I feel meaningful to do. Because at that time I read a book, and they asked us to think about what you want people to say on your deathbed. And then I realized I didn't really care about a lot of these like exco positions and things like that. Okay, so I wanted to see if I can do both. Okay, this is a true story. It's not I don't think it's like a very, very rational thing, but life is short. So I thought, okay, let's try and do something meaningful. And I think that is one of the reasons why the President's Scholarship worked out. Okay, so what did I do? I was very interested in business. I also wanted to help people, so we started a few social enterprises. Okay, for the students who are not so familiar, these are businesses that, in the course of doing business, we try to achieve some social aims as well. Okay, so we started one where there were these underprivileged children who were interested in art. So we partnered with a school to give them free art lessons. But how do we pay for them? All their artwork, we will help them commercialize and distribute. So companies that want to commission an artwork will have the children do something, and then the company will pay for the artwork, and all this will go to their schooling. And then then we signed up for international business competition, and then shared some of these things that we're doing in Singapore. Yeah, and that's where we won world champion uh, representing Singapore. I was also interested in music, so I participated in some of these YouTube music competitions, and then ended up being able to perform at Timber. Last time it used to be a very popular kind of bar spot. Now I think less so. But then from Timber, we also organized some concerts in school for the same underprivileged children who some of them are interested in art, so we do the artwork stuff. Some of them are interested in music, so we brought them to school. I rounded up some of the other guys who were interested in music. All we did in the school is to use their auditorium. Everything else, the students, the performers, the beneficiaries, these are all found by ourselves. Okay. So what I wanted to share is that really, I think don't feel constrained by the school. Of course, if there's an opportunity, if there's a natural community there, you can take advantage of it. Go for it. Okay. But really, the world now is there's so many opportunities. Okay, so for example, if any of you are interested in that environment, I guarantee you there will be an environmental club. Please don't go and join things like the environmental club. It's not the only way to express your passion. You are a young adult today already. There are real problems that you can solve. Yeah, of course you cannot solve everything in the world, but you can make progress if you really focus and are creative and actually go and follow the real problems. Okay, so just an example, um, some of the very interesting stories I've heard recently. There was a guy. This is about 2 years ago. A guy who was very interested in skateboarding. Okay, and I mentioned so he wants to try and follow his passion. He's very interested in skateboarding. So what did he do? He actually, he noticed that the city that he lived in didn't have a skate park. Yeah, and he knows it because he's a skateboarder. He knows that actually it's not so good. Okay, so I don't know how uh, our skate facilities are like to real skateboarders because I cannot balance at all on a skateboard. But hypothetically, what would they have looked like in Singapore? So this guy in his city, he actually went to go and find out, okay, how do I design a skate park? Get the rough budget. Then after that, he put together a presentation as to how it will work, whether it can be financially viable. Then he went to pitch it to members of the community. Of course, you can tap from your school network, but really a lot of this is up to you to hustle. Okay, then he set up, he raised funds. He raised funds for the skate park. Then he managed the project. Using the funds, he worked with an architect, built the skate park, and then after that, start to manage the running of the skate park. Of course, that means he has to go and figure out how to hire and all that. So you see, these are, if you compare it to anything that a typical JC student does, there's no competition, right? And these things are, if you ask me, they are a lot less competitive, a lot more meaningful, a lot more creative. Yeah, of course, not all of us will be able to achieve something like that, but the thing is that most of us don't even try. Yeah, you think that all you have is is the um is the menu that you have in school. It was not true in my time. That's why I wanted to share with you my own experiences. And it's completely not true today. A second thing is, okay, there was this girl who really likes music. Okay, so what did she do? She actually reached out to a few of the influencers. She set a really ambitious goal. She wanted to organize the first teen organized Broadway musical. Okay, so the equivalent here would be to perform at the Esplanade. Okay, but how does she make sure it succeeds? She reached out to influencers who are already singing online. Okay, again, this is a passion, so she knows who these people are. Reach out to the influencers who are singing online. Those influencers agreed to participate in the show, and then they pitched the the show to all their followers. So from day one already, they sold out their ticket for their first opening night. Okay, so you know, am I asking everybody to go and build a skate park and do a Broadway musical? No, not at all. I think all of you have your own interests. That's why you're all young adults already. I want to suggest, right, that you try and do something real in your JC life. I think for many reasons, it'll make you stand out more. I think you will find that a lot of your questions, because you see the questions, These are all valid questions, but they're very tactical. That's why most of the answers are it depends and see what you can do. But all these opportunities that you can create for yourself, there is nobody competing with you. It is up to you to go and do it. And there's so many things to do in Singapore. You just go outside, open a newspaper, every page, there's a problem to solve. Elderly people dying alone at home. Can you make progress on that? I'm sure you can. Can you solve it completely? I don't think so. But can you make progress? I'm sure you can. Do you need a club to do that? Do you need to be an interact club to go and volunteer to help them? You do not know. You do not need to. And sometimes these clubs, the way that they help, so somebody was mentioning about the RI principle, right? So yeah, the RI principle is telling a lot of them, please try to understand actually what these people really, really need. Don't think about what your CCA wants to do for them and then go and help them in that way. Yeah, so some CCAs, sometimes they constrain you. Really just go and look at the problem and ask yourself, how might I make some progress? And if you really make some progress solving something like this, I think, first of all, you have spent your life very well in JC. I think you will learn a lot. You will often meet a lot of people, very interesting people along that journey. A lot of these causes have very uh, um, distinguished people also contributing to them on the boards of the non-profits and all that. There are many, many opportunities that you can seize if you're willing to go off the beaten path, lah. Okay. Yeah. Uh, I think that is one thing that's why I don't think you should over-index on the JC, because really all of these things are available uh, if you want to seize them. Yeah, I also agree with Alvin's comment on this past year paper thing. Maybe the way to understand it is just that if that is the only way that you learn, then I don't think that is funnily enough, that's why I don't think I can agree with it. Is that, yeah, I drew a lot, okay? But it did not stop me from really understanding things. If anything, it helped me understand things very, very well, because at the end of the day, all these questions
Yeah.
are application. And I'm not talking as somebody who's just book smart. Um, through, through both uni, where the math foundation and the sort of the STEM foundation I got in Singapore also helped me to top all the universities. But when I go into the real world as well, like being strong at maths,
Yeah.
being good at writing, like your summary technique, right? That you're doing at O levels, you also do at A levels. Do you know that is the most useful tool that I use day to day in the civil service last time? Right? When you write an email to, let's say, Taman, right? He has no way he's going to read a long email, right? You have one subject line, and you know a subject line in an email, right? It is like 10 words long. You have 10 words to tell him why you should open the email. And once you open the email, then you have one paragraph to tell him why he should open your attachment. And once you open the attachment, you have one page to tell him what this report is really about, the executive summary. And then if you're really interesting enough and you have shown the value of it, then you go on to the rest of the 80-page report. So I very much disagree that drills are not a useful thing. Of course, are there other ways to learn? For sure. But what is the system that we have? We definitely have exams. They are there to test you, to assess you. They're also there to sort you. And if you do not practice past year exams, I don't know who you're going to kill lah. You are going to the battle, like all your arms, all your legs tied up, and you're crawling on the floor where everybody else is just running normally. So I'm sure that comment is taken out of context lah. Okay.
Okay, but I want to emphasize this again. What Moses said is generally true, right? You see, we all need to do exams, but the most importantly is that you do not just do it without understanding, okay? As long as you do it and you understand it, then that is why it is tested. It will be useful for it. It doesn't matter how I do it. I cannot do any maths Olympiad questions because I'm not in category, but I do well in all the exams, whether it's school, whether in university. Why? Because I got a basis on which to solidify my understanding and to and make sure that everything which I should know, I must know. Does it help me become a better student? Obviously. Okay, and I tell you, because we were transition, I tell you this is the reality because I used to be in the finance, and in the finance field, I was also, as I was a manager at one of the big firms, we do all the university recruitment. So this is very one interesting scenario. You know, SMU started as a business and law university. Okay, it was modeled after Wharton School, where Moses was from. Okay, for his undergrad, Moses was at Wharton and Princeton, and he did in an AI cert at Stanford. So this was what happened. So they got all the Wharton faculty. That was when the GPA system first started in all the local universities. So NTU, I studied at NTU. I did accountancy at NTU, all very grounded. We had to learn certain things, principles, everything was cool. So when SMU started a different model based on the water model, which was okay. Now the problem was that NTU wanted to follow. So this was where the problem arose. So they wanted to follow, and they wanted to follow something like the Finnish system. But as I told the world, when Finland, they always, you always hear quoted in the papers Finland. But let me ask you something. What brand names come from Finland except Nokia, which is dead, and Angry Birds, which has died? Okay, but this is the reality. So it is the wrong basis for us to compare. But this is what happened. So what happened was that we were all pretty shocked because this was a point of contention which we conveyed to the universities. So at the point when they did the transition, and what happened to SMU was that they recruited all the top professors from NTU. So NTU had to recruit from scratch. Never mind. So what happened was that they decided to come up with a new model, case-based learning, follow the fitness model. So instead of learning basic principles, everybody was given case studies. Okay, a case study like, oh, this is a company, so many issues come into play: tax issues, financial issues, marketing issues. Good, well and good real life application, but one fundamental problem: they don't know their basic principles. And this was the feedback I gave. I said that if you graduate from accountancy and you don't even know how to create a trial balance, how to create a balance sheet, we have a problem. True, balance sheets may be generated by the computers, but you still need to understand the principles because this is the core of your business. But because everything gets hidden in a wishy-washy, high-level case study, it ended up all the students came out were not technically proficient. And in a technical industry like accounting and finance, it is a big problem. So they had to revert. How did I become good in counting? I was a triple science student. Last time, we still could take triple science. You all know no longer. Weilun's time, Moses cannot triple science. I was a triple science student. Triple science is the worst possible combination you can do to do accountancy. Why? Because you got zero background. Zero background. At least many of them had econs. I had zero. It's the worst possible combination. So what did I do to become good in accounting? I scored A in all my accounting and finance, despite not being an arts or commerce or anything. How? I practice all my past year papers, all my tutorials. I don't know. I worked them until I understood. Does it help me? Absolutely. I became very good at finance as well. So just because you do past year papers doesn't make you inferior. So this is clearly not correct if it's phrased it directly. And for some of you, because I received some comments that you were very demoralized when you heard the principal say that. Don't be demoralized. Okay? Whatever it is,
Yeah. Please, as in
yeah,
it
don't
is.
be demoralized.
Let's be under no illusions, okay?
Yeah,
I tell you, if any, okay, especially for those of you who are posting your scores,
yeah,
if any RI student can get these scores, they are already top 10% in RI.
yeah,
Okay. I just be
definitely.
very frank with you. So all the questions you guys have about whether you guys will be behind all that, I really don't think so. Okay. At the end of the day, for things like maths, for things like physics, or that, the concepts are they are constant electromagnetism. Okay. Then after that, you start to work out your differentiation, calculus, statistics. I mean, these are things. Your foundations matter. Doesn't matter if you drink RI water or NUS high water. Okay. Like maths is maths. So if you have done well enough that you have this rigor, you can do well in a high pressure exam and you bring yourself to this spot, you should be damn proud of yourself. Okay. I was an MES scholar. The girl who was in my year, there were 3 MES scholars. One of them was a JE student, Bukit Panjang High. And then she crushed it in RJ. Okay. Is it because she has a super strong foundation? No, because I know she just works damn hard. You know, like I first met her inside RJ because I always see her studying there as well. So be prepared to work hard. Please don't get misguided by some of these quotes which are taken out of context. I'm very sure it is because it cannot be true. I mean, throughout all my life, right? I go to I go to Wharton, Princeton, Stanford. I go to MES. I learn how to write monetary policy. You know how I get good? It is not like that, you know. When I want to learn monetary policy, I go and get the full set of the past 30 years of monetary policy papers and I read through everything.
Past year papers.
No, how can no? I mean, it's just how can you not? How can you learn
Yeah.
if you don't look at the past? So I'm very sure this is taken out of context, and please don't take the wrong message away from it, lah. Okay, you have a lot of resources. The good thing about O and A levels that the syllabus is very, very constant. Okay, if at most they move things here and there, they drop some stuff, they add some stuff, but yeah, you know, I mean, when I first came back to help students, I just go and redo the papers. Yeah, a lot of it is similar to my time. It's been almost wow, it's been almost 15 years already. Okay, so yeah, make full use of all of these resources. You will learn a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of questions in the chat lah, about which JC. So, but I really don't have a strong view. As in, I hope the thing I'm trying to tell you guys is that don't get boxed in by your JC. There's a lot of opportunity. First of all, most of the learning is going to be yourself. Like I guarantee you, for myself, 90% of my learning was outside of the classroom. Really, really. Like for example, back in my time, just of course things may change, but maybe get the idea. At my time, I just knew, okay, RI past year papers quite good. Hwa Chong past year papers quite good. Is it because their questions are very good? No. It's that their answer key was fantastic. So I could learn a lot of things from the answer key. And what other schools are very good? VJ, NJ. Yeah, I found that the teachers there at that time spent a lot of time on their answer keys. So their answer keys actually read like great notes. And then, I can try and then I can learn. I just spent 2-3 months doing this. I'm way ahead of what the teachers in RI can teach already because not that they're not good teachers, but they don't have enough time. Then when I met my GP teacher recently, he reminded me that I told him that if other people need more help with their GP, it's okay. He don't need to consult with me. Why? I don't say that because I'm proud. I know because I have so many teachers. I have the entire 10-year VJC prelim answer keys to go and learn from. I know it's in my pocket to learn. All it takes is my hard work. Okay, so I mean, through my life, these academic things have not come easy. If you ask anybody who really knows me, I just outwork everybody lah. Okay, maybe I have above average intelligence. I think this is definitely for sure, but my work is not just above average. It is probably at the top 1% of how much time people put in. And because of that, if you want to say that I'm a rote learner, sure, I'll take that any day because that foundation has stayed with me through my life. Right now, if I do programming, I want to go and learn anything like that grounding from Singapore's education system has given me all the opportunities in the world. So I think I mean, you should make the choice as far as possible, but you see the questions in the chat, we are splitting hairs, right? They are obviously quite competitive JCs, right? NJ, Temasek JC. You really got to decide where you are. If you can go for open house, go and see which facilities you like. But there will be good teachers, there will be bad teachers. There'll be some CCAs which are there, and in certain schools there will not be. So it's very hard to say what is a slightly better choice. And in fact, the JC is not going to determine your fate. What you spend the next 2 years doing is going to determine it. So I much rather, if you have time tomorrow, you just join us at the JC seminar. I much rather we talk about specifics. What are you really interested in? Then we can use that as a case study to talk about some ideas to do over the next 2 years. Then maybe other people can learn as well. That will move the needle much more. If you go, I don't think these choices are. I don't think any disaster will happen with the choices that you guys are making. You guys did very well. You guys did very well. So that's why you have all these options. Yeah. So don't worry too much about it. Really spend the time on something meaningful in your CCA journey. Try to do something that is distinctive, that adds real value to Singapore. I'm not saying once you focus on real value, you'll be extremely distinctive already, okay? Because you just look at the vast majority of CCAs. What do? It's like a playground, people voting for each other for exco position, then they do a little thing. I mean, okay, but there's so many real things in the world to do. Okay, so that is important. And then if you can, right now, I said I actually would really, really get started because 2 years will pass like that for your academics. Okay, Alvin, when I was in school, I think there were some statistics. The average GPA in RI was between 3.2 to 3.6, right? Something
No,
like that.
3.6 overstated.
Yeah, 3.2, I think. Yeah. So
3.2.
yeah.
1 to 3.2.
Yeah, that's why I say like if you guys are scoring these levels, when you go in, you will be top 10% in
Yeah,
in any of
yeah.
these schools, okay? Not just RI. No, you'll be top 10% in RI, so not even to say the other schools. So um don't look down on yourself. In fact, you should recognize what you have achieved and then don't rest on your laurels already. Keep compounding this. That kind of discipline that you took to get here, keep going, you know? Yeah, I think you guys will do very well in JC if you follow that path lah. And like I said, in my time, I only had the RI notes. But now on Holy Grail, I realize you have multiple years, multiple JCs. Whatever JC you think that is better but you couldn't get into, go and download the notes and see for yourself. Go and do the practices and see for yourself. You got ChatGPT now that will check most of your work for you. It's really up to you to go and get the work done. Okay, I had a timetable where basically every week I'll try to be slightly ahead of the school. Then it really makes it easy to do well. Then when you guys join the JC chat, when it's closer to the exams, we'll just go over some of the things because there was a time where I was so strong in the exams that for one of the chemistry papers, there's organic chemistry that everybody will say is very scary, and it is very scary if you don't study. But I was so strong at academics that in one of the exams I got 70, and then the next highest mark in the level was 45.
Yeah.
Because they said it too hard. But when they rounded it up, then I was at full marks. And what did I do? I found some exam techniques that were very, very important to do. And that was what set me apart. Of course, from the knowledge-wise, a lot of these people are competitive with me, but some of these exam techniques, when the exam papers are longer, right now it's like 3-hour papers. Okay, so there are really a few things that you have to take note of in JC. We'll be happy to share that at a more appropriate time. And of course, others we can talk until the cows come home tonight. Okay? Yeah, so it's all in your hands. I hope we'll be happy to answer some of these specific questions, but really a bit hard. I don't know TJC versus NJC, which performs
TGC,
better.
NGC,
Yeah.
I will tell you, at a cohort level, there will be competitive students and not so competitive students. I use the word competitive, I don't use the word good, okay? So if you would ask me just for my frank opinion as a cohort, which is a little bit more competitive, and I say that it is a little bit why? Because it's really not significant, okay? A little bit more competitive historically would probably be NGC. I use the word little bit more competitive, but it doesn't mean anything in the bigger scheme of things. I already gave you the example of the NGC student. I see many of these. Okay, and anyway, you look at our mind stretcher principal, Christy Lim. She was from TGC. I'm quite sure she does a lot better than the Hua Chong.
Yeah, I mean, that goes
I'm
without
telling you, this
saying.
is the reality.
Yeah.
And Stephen Sim was also from TGC. His English is way better than many of the RI and Hua Chong teachers I've seen. So we don't need to be too fixated. These are all in every school there will be good, average, weak students. This is a bell curve in all JCs. Same thing like the teachers. That's why ultimately we cannot emphasize enough. Is it going to make a difference whether you go to TJC, NJC? I will be very frank with you, no. Is it going to make a difference whether you go to RI versus TJC? In terms of the level of competition, yes. In terms of the difficulty, yes. But is it necessarily good for you? I can't say that.
Yeah, because so many of my friends, because RI of course sets the papers quite hard. But again, you have access to the papers if you want to try, okay?
Yeah.
But what happens is that they are all very demoralized. For the
they're
first
all
time in their
demoralized.
life, you know how many of my friends they come out from their first mid-year E, S, D, you know how scary it is or not to go through that. So uh, some of them that will be able to recover from that, they're okay, but they immediately they told themselves they're not strong at the subject anymore,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And um, one is the difficulty level, but again, for me, it is in your court lah. What happens to a lot of people is that me included, the first 3 months it feels damn exciting. You got all the CCA, meeting so many new people. For me, first time I'm in a school with girls, as in lot of distractions lah. Okay, so my recommendation is that if you got a bit of time now, set aside a timetable. At least make sure you know your basics. Stay on track. Yeah, don't fall behind, especially for things like math and physics. You fall behind, it stacks on each other. Yeah, then suddenly you find yourself you have to do 1 year. You have to redo 1 year's worth of work before you can catch up. This is very scary. And the concepts are not as simple, of course. Okay, but it's not out of your reach. Just get started, do it regularly. And then, when the time, as we get started with some of the mind structure resources, um, yeah, we will also share those with you, especially some of these subjects which distinctions can be quite rare to find. For example, for GP, do you know that in Hwa Chong, uh, I mean, you see it's one of the top here, right? Only 40% of the students get distinctions for GP. Yeah, so again, there's nothing magic in the water. It's not like everybody goes there, they do very well. Yeah, 40% get distinctions, the rest of them don't. So how do they do it? We know how they do it. We will share that when the time comes. It is very, very, we know how to prepare for these things lah. All right. Okay, let's see. Please feel free. I mean, Alvin, Weilun, and I will stay here until around 10. If you guys have any questions, happy to answer already. Okay.
William, can you also share with them the MSAA document? So reminder.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, thanks.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just share the slide. Okay, let me just share this.
Is it true that IB considered easier in terms of difficulty? Generally, yes lah.
Generally,
This is definitely true.
this is true.
Yeah,
Right now,
okay, but it is okay. So there's like all things in life, there's nuance, lah. Okay, but you want the answer is definitely true. Okay, but why is it? Is part of it is the coverage, okay, but also is the structure of the examination. Okay, you need to know that like for IB, there are all these independent study components which are done at home. So you walk into the exam with about 20% of it in the pocket already. Yeah, which is very different from A levels lah, where you walk in with nothing in your pocket and you hope you come out with something, you know. So there are these factors, and if you look at the, generally somebody who is strong, oh no, sorry, somebody who is not super strong, just by virtue of things like the independent study, they'll already likely get a 5 or 6 out of 7 for IB. Whereas in A levels, if you're not so strong, you will likely get D, C, those kind of scores lah. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Moses. Yeah, so to share, on this here, you will see on this slide the MindStretcher Achievement Awards. So actually for students, MindStretcher students who have been enrolled in our regular weekly classes, and also for students, if you are not in the weekly classes but you have actually taken part in our O-level boot camps as well, actually are eligible for these MindStretcher Achievement Awards, and it's really our way of really encouraging and really motivating our students and recognizing all the hard work and all the academic successes they have put in. So actually, you all can actually scan the QR here, to put in the information, right, with regards to yourself and the scores, so that we can also look through them and also recognize and award these awards to all the
Mm.
students.
Yeah.
Beyond just the academic achievement awards, there's also like, special awards, because we also do recognize that on this journey, it's not just the academic achievements themselves that matter. It's also a matter of you, exemplifying your hard work, be it in terms of your holistic development, be it in terms of all the great progress that you have made. So we also recognize that too. So do check out the link, and then you can put in your results there,
Yeah.
and then that will help us to facilitate
Yeah.
Yeah.
these awards.
Yeah.
Just to give you some real examples, like last year, right? A couple of poly students got it. Wow. Okay, so in the exams, let's say in June they were getting like seven or eight for the mathematics, for the chemistry. But when it came to the O levels, they got a B3, A2, A1. They nominate themselves for this assurance, and we really felt that they deserve it. So it's not a case of you need to get, as long as you show progress, you exemplify something which I think you deserve it. Because remember, nothing is cast in stone one. We all develop, we all are unique in our own different ways. As long as you show something which is different, please nominate yourself. William, can you go back to the previous slide? No, the previous slide, the one which you showed the categories of achievement. Yeah. So you realize that this is what we mean by the special awards. So when we talk about the O level and IP awards, this is fixed. Like if you get a certain number of A's, you are going to get this. But more importantly, you realize that the special awards are also there. Teachers nomination, the student self-nomination, best progress, valedictorian, special achievements awards. And the great thing about this is that we don't have a number. We don't have a fixed number. We will give to whoever deserves it. Okay, so just to give you an idea, some of you may have gotten it during PSLE, right? Some of you. If not, it doesn't matter. You can still get it now. Okay, so like every year for the last couple of years, every year we have a cohort around 700 plus students. The reason why we try to give as many as possible is that we all recognize that there's no single milestone. And we are always not of the favor that we only award it to the top scoring students. We want to give it to as many students as possible because it is a way to recognize your effort, a way to motivate you. Because as a young kid myself, I was utterly motivated by all these things. Yeah. So I think it's a form of recognition, and it'll be a physical award ceremony, which I think is pretty cool. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So please make
Weilun,
sure
do
to,
you
yeah.
yeah. So definitely please throw your hat in the ring lah. Okay. By by I mean we do this. It costs my structure a lot of money, but we think it's very important to
Yeah.
recognize where people have come. Okay.
Yeah.
Like whatever your journey is, I mean we can name countless people, both personal contacts as well as people out there, that everybody has their own journey. Okay. And like right now, again, we are at one milestone done. Then now this next 2 years or 3 years, if you're in poly and beyond, there's so much stuff to do. Your life is just beginning. Okay. So let's celebrate where we have gotten to. And then for this next phase of journey, also we are quite happy to support. Like, in fact, this phase for in our humble opinion is much more interesting. You start to get to do real stuff. You start to do something meaningful with your life already. So there's actually a lot of opportunity to do stuff. Okay. I put our junior college community chat in the in the Zoom. Okay. And the Zoom chat. So if you haven't joined already, please join us there. Weilun, maybe you want to give them a preview of what we'll cover tomorrow. Weilun.
Yeah, okay, Ken.
Yeah.
So, for tomorrow, actually, what we'll be doing is, I think there were some questions in the chat with regards to the JC pathway subject combinations. So
Mm.
we'll touch a bit more on for the different JCs, what does it mean in terms of entering into the science stream and the art stream, right? And how do you know whether you're a good fit in terms of the streams? And then also in terms of the subject combinations,
Mm.
prerequisites, right? So some of you may be wondering about, are there assumed knowledge? Are there subject requirements when you
Mm.
want to enter into the JCs? That's another thing we'll look at.
Mm.
I briefly talk about the, scoring system. So what's the implications when you go to the tertiary levels? If you are certain programs you want to take, for example, like dentistry, medicine, law, are there requisites, right? And what are these that will be good for you to already have a leg up in terms of your JC and everything. And eventually then how does that build into your career aspirations and everything. So that's the areas that we will talk on tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, guys, the formal stuff that we will share, because those are generally a lot of the questions that if we don't get through, some people will uh, may be unsure. Okay, so the formal thing will only take about 30 minutes tomorrow. We can also follow this sort of format. While once we cover the formal things, if you guys want to chat, is a whole new part of your schooling life as well, both for the students as well as the parents. We will definitely have some of these open-ended discussions as well. Okay, so we'll see where the conversation takes us. So if you guys find it helpful, see you guys tomorrow. But if not, you can always
Yeah.
follow up in the chat.
So
Okay.
because I realized that some of you asked me whether your friends can come, please, all our seminars, all our resources, please get your friends to come because you see, after this, there are two students who are seeing me. One of them is his friend. It is not limited to just my special students. Since we are helping everybody, advice for me is universal, right? Right. So what happens if you if all your friends sitting down here? Am
Yeah.
I going to explain? No, they will benefit as well. So please bring them to join.
And honestly, because it's not like it's a secret, What matters is that what we can do is to provide the advice. We can share with you what works, because it has not changed for many years. What works, at the end of it, that everything is down to you, and that what we try to do is to open your eyes a bit to see the possibilities. Right now that I share what some of the people do in their JC as well as their pre-U careers, you realize like how constrained the normal CCAs are in JCs compared to what is actually possible now. Yeah. Okay. So we can talk tomorrow if you have specifics about your children. Again, like that is my favorite kind of conversation to have. Like beyond the schooling, if you have passions that you want to pursue, you want to talk about how you can pursue it in JC. You want to talk about for certain subjects, what are the ways to prepare. We're very happy to provide some initial guidance. Of course, when it is closer to the exams, and when MyStretcher has the formal resources out, we also share those. Those will give you a lot more structure too. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Good night, everybody. Bye bye.
Thanks, Weilun, for leading the session. As you know, Weilun is a very experienced educator. So whatever, because Weilun also went through the system, been there and done that. Anytime you've been there and done that, you can share a lot of things. Okay. So thank you, Weilun, for taking the lead.
Yeah, thanks Alvin and Moses as well. And thanks everybody for coming. Right. So do check out our remaining webinars over tomorrow and Saturday. And also do join the channels where we'll share more information over there too. Right. So have a good night, everybody. We'll see you. And best of luck for the JAE too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good night.